Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on YouTube. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies?
Hello, and welcome to Midnight Metal.
Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your goofiest of all goof people, Robert Meyer Burnett. This is Midnight Metal, episode number 74. I have an announcement to make about this show. This is going to be the last episode of Midnight Metal. Next week is episode 75. We're changing it. It's no longer going to be Midnight Metal. It's going to be Midnight Musings, because this show is decidedly unmetal. You know, I think when I was doing it with Dave Parker, he's more metal, but I like the fact that the Midnight Metal was born out of the Snyder Cut, and things changed. The sleeper must awaken. And after all, we have intellectual conversations on this channel at midnight now. So, you know, that doesn't mean that Midnight Metal might not rear its ugly head again. But we've gone this is the 74th episode for episode 75. It's kind of like the 75th episode of a TV show or the 75th issue of a comic. And to talk about that further, you know her, you love her. She's...
Hello, Robert. It's the last Midnight Metal, Robert. The last Midnight Metal.
It is, but that doesn't mean we're not going to see you next week on Midnight Musings or Midnight Marmalade or Midnight Madness.
Yes,
maybe
exactly,
it'll be Midnight
Robert.
Madness. Could be Midnight Madness. Midnight Musings is a little too sedate. That means I have chamomile tea and I'm going to bed. No. Midnight Madness might be better, because then we can do whatever we want. Midnight Musings, maybe not. It doesn't have the bite we need.
Exactly, and I feel like we'd have to be like court jesters and kind of like come up with jokes all the time.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be Midnight Madness. That's better.
It's going to be crazy, Robert, just as insane and as successful as your venture for Midnight Metal has been. And congratulations for coming up with this idea and providing this wonderful forum for PGS members to share and talk about the things we love.
Well, yes, it's true. And you and I were talking about Star Trek novels before this show came on, talking about Star Trek Coda. You know, I think even Mikey Lito, who's in the chat, he's been reading it too.
Yes.
So maybe we can have a three-way and talk about Coda. I'm sure you would. I'm sure Mikey would too. Who doesn't? Although sometimes you get a little distracted. It's hard to know where your attention should lie, but that's part of the fun.
We can be adults about it.
Speaking of adults, you sent me an article today.
Yes.
That I didn't see because I've been so busy this week, from the Hollywood Reporter. And now, I am a John Cameron Mitchell fan. I don't know how many of you have you must have seen Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Oh yes.
So for those of you who don't know, Hedwig and I did put at the top of this chat, I put the trailer for the film version of Hedwig, and I also put the trailer for the new trailer actually for John Cameron Mitchell's movie Shortbus that he also directed. But he directed and starred as Hedwig. You know, it's so funny to me because of all the talk about gender and LGBTQ, I mean, nothing was more interesting to me in terms of, to me, Hedwig and the Angry Inch is like the great movie about gender, about gender bending and about what love is and what art is and what sex is and what passion is and what depression is and all those things. And I would have thought that with all of the talk in the current day about, I would think that Hedwig and the Angry Inch would be the non-binary, I don't know, the way The Crow speaks to the goth crowd. I would say that Hedwig and the Angry Inch should be one of those films that speaks to anybody who is gender bending. It's a terrific film, and it's based on, of course, the rock opera, I guess you'd call it, the stage show. And Criterion recently reissued the movie. It came out on New Line, from New Line originally, but there's a terrific making of documentary that delves into the history of Hedwig and how John Cameron Mitchell came up with it. And then, of course, many other people followed him in the lead role as Hedwig. And everybody put their own sort of spin on it. And it was kind of this punk underground show that everybody in New York was going to see. And the movie really knocked me out when I first saw it. I also know that Dave Parker, Midnight Metal Dave Parker, he's a huge fan of John Cameron Mitchell's Hedwig, and yeah, big fan, and he's a big fan of The Crow too. So he likes those sort of defining, I think, subcultural defining movies. But Hedwig is a terrific film, and then John Cameron Mitchell went on to make other movies, and it's really interesting because I think that Hedwig is a really mature look, an examination of, it's not just Hedwig, it's his entire band of merry pranksters, call them, if you're familiar with the electric Kool-Aid acid test. But all about people that are living on the fringes, alternative ways of looking at things, but there's a real empathy in John Cameron Mitchell's work, and there's a great love and affection for his characters, and something I really respond to. And the music's good.
It's fantastic.
It's
it's like a musical. It is, for me, it is a musical, rock opera musical, as you mentioned, and
there's animated segments in it.
It does not detract from the seriousness of the story and the dignity that the story is told in.
Absolutely, and I cannot recommend Hedwig highly enough. And if you Let's Get Physical media, get that Criterion disc, because it does include the original documentary that was on the New Line release, the DVD release, and the aughts. It's a fantastic special features documentary. It's a feature-length documentary. It's really terrific. Well, anyway, so why don't you tell me, set up this article that you sent me today. How did you just read it in today's Hollywood Reporter? What made you decide to send this article to me?
Well, the reason why I wanted to send the article to you was it had something to do with the idea of the absence of sex and intimacy in modern entertainment. Right. And, while it is true that there are some films that do not require it or probably shouldn't have it in there, for the most part, there are a lot of films that can be enhanced and stories that can be told that would complete them with having sex and intimacy in them. And so, the idea of looking at films that were made prior to, let's say, 2010, where sex and intimacy was something that was commonly spoken about, and
depicted.
Spoken about, depicted, innuendos about it, implied. It was something that, even if it was not shown on the screen, you were made aware that something was happening. In fact, there's one movie that I liked that starred, I can't remember this guy's name. I think Stanley Tucci, where, there's a woman who's kind of looking for her husband in New York. It was, it is a talkie or like a talking. I don't know how you describe it. The film is all talk. There's no actual sex in it. But, and I liked the film because she's looking for him because he's not coming home anymore. And of course, she wants him to come home because she wants to be intimate with her husband. And of course she finds him at a party with someone else. The end of the film is she finds him, but it was so well done. And I think that showing her desire to be intimate with her husband, and things didn't work out, and she dealt with it, but the care that it was done, and the way that it was depicted was not in a way that I felt that was unrealistic. People are going through this shit every day, and this was so beautifully done. And she kind of masterfully picked herself up and said, okay, fine, this is how it's going to be, this is how it's going to be, but I think that the idea of making films that show relationships as entertainment, sex as entertainment, while still telling a wonderful story, are things that people want to see. And, a lot of couples look to films like this and examine their lives and reflect. But there's a lot of us who also kind of enjoy seeing people getting together and having these romances. A lot of science fiction films that I like to see have romance in them. And as we were talking about the other day, Star Wars has romance in it. And, of course, we want to see those connections.
Do you think a princess and a guy like me? No.
I think anyone has a chance with a princess, but you just have to show that you love the person. I think that's an additional step for that. But when I saw this article and the idea about a panic about sex now, what I found interesting about it was that we've had these discussions that not only in movies, but in day-to-day operations, you can't walk down the street and tell someone that you think they're attractive anymore. You can't, say, I really like you, you can't do these things anymore. And it's kind of robbed us of this intimacy, this, and the ability to express ourselves as sexual beings. And when you do that, you kind of lose a lot. A lot of the independent films that I grew up watching had a lot to do with sex and intimacy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and in a very mature way. I mean, there's films I have in my collection. I mean, I think about movies like The Night Porter, which is something, which is a Charlotte Rampling movie that's very interesting. And I remember a guy I work with at Warner Brothers. His name's Paul. He made a really low budget movie about two guys who hook up, and they spent the weekend together, and they obviously had a great night together, but it was about the aftermath of their night. And I thought it was a terrific independent movie, and I forget the name of it. God, I can't, but it was really interesting because, in terms of like a gay male relationship, it was depicted very matter of factly. Like it wasn't salacious, but the idea that, when you think about what sexuality is, to me, it's always been sort of funny because it's a combination of our physicality and our imagination. So like I'm a huge David Cronenberg fan, and I was having a conversation last night. I was at dinner with Connie Sang and Elizabeth and I. And I was talking about David Cronenberg because Connie was watching all the Hellraiser movies, and I was telling her about I love Cronenberg's early body horror movies, and the reason I love those movies is because he deals with the fact that we are, our essence, like our spirit, our soul, our intellect, call it what you will, we reside in these meat sacks, these fleshy containers that really have nothing to do with our intellect. They're just pumping blood and air, and they're keeping our intellect alive. But at any one moment, our bodies can revolt against our intellect. They can develop cancers, or they grow old, and yet our minds and our imaginations are not beholden to the bodies that we live in. Except when it comes to things like sexuality, when we employ our imagination and our spirituality and all that if you really think about it, the idea of getting aroused by another person is kind of a weird concept. There's a great Star Trek episode called By Any Other Name. It's from the second season where Rojan and Kalinda, they've come from the Andromeda galaxy, and they've taken human form. And there's this great scene. Barbara Boucher plays Kalinda, and she's like one of the hottest women that's ever been on TV ever. And she's like, I just don't understand, this. Why are you so caught up with this biological act? Like, I don't understand. Like, because she's like some giant tentacled creature that's taken human form, and they don't have any. Their sense of sexuality or reproduction is not romanticized. And Kirk's like, let me show you. And I was just like, all right. And when you think about it, it's really strange, and yet the act is so pleasurable, and especially when two people are skilled at it and they're both coming at it from the same point of view. I think there's been such a disparity in terms of human sexuality throughout most of history. But anyway, so John Cameron Mitchell, I think really attacked sexuality in a very interesting way. First in Hedwig, when he was playing with gender norms and identity, and in a very even the idea that people have two sides. They're like, he was the first person that in a movie, he wasn't coming out and just saying non-binary, but he was definitely dealing with that issue about how gender is fluid and all. It was fascinating. But in Shortbus, so for those of you who don't know, he made a movie called Shortbus that is a great, again, and only in New York, a very much a New York indie film scene. But he had his actors, people are actually having sex, but it's not, I mean, porn, the word pornographic actually means without feeling. That's not what this is. It's sexually explicit, but it's not pornographic. And I'm sure somebody now would be like, why did you call it Shortbus? That's not very nice. Whatever. But so anyway, so John Cameron Mitchell, they re-released Shortbus. And I'm going to read this. I want to read this article.
Robert,
go ahead.
Before you start reading, can you please make Tom Jr. Jackson a mod tonight? Please.
Uh-oh. Hold on. Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I should have told you earlier, but
Are people getting salty?
No, it's just he and I tonight. So
did something happen between you guys? Oh, already this chat, by the way, has been limited. The in terms of its
they've because of how we've been speaking about sex and sexual encounters and sexual situations and scenes of a sexual nature, Robert.
It's such a funny thing that you can't even have these kinds of, like, are we having a lascivious discussion? I don't think so.
No, this is a mature adult conversation about sex and sexual situations.
Yeah, so and it's about an actual movie. So let me just read this article that you sent me. I give you all the credit in the world. There's a panic about sex now, John Cameron Mitchell, and how culture has shifted since the release of the explicit Shortbus. The filmmaker said his 2006 film can be both therapeutic and challenging for today's audiences. There's so much tension about hurting, offending, or triggering. This is full of triggers. And here we go. And by the way, this was Chris Gardner wrote this article, and it was published yesterday or Friday at 1:22 in the morning. Of course, because Chris couldn't publish this during the day, so he did it in the morning. So this article says, goes on, movie stars don't have sex, they just don't. John Cameron Mitchell said Wednesday night inside Laemmle's New Art Theater, that's here in L.A., during a Q&A that followed a special screening of his experimental and sexually explicit Shortbus. Of course, movie stars do get intimate, but they don't typically have real penetrative sex on camera outside of the porn industry. That is precisely what Mitchell wanted to capture and explore in the 2006 film, which is getting a theatrical re-release and 4K restoration from Oscilloscope Laboratories to mark the 15th anniversary milestone. Shortbus stars Suk-Yi Lee, Paul Dawson, Lindsay Beamish, PJ Du Bois, Raphael Barker, Peter Stickles, Jay Brannon, Adam Hardman, and Justin Vivian Bond as a group of New Yorkers navigating love, sex, and intimacy in and around a modern-day underground salon in a post-9/11 reality. It's packed with nudity, orgies, erect penises, musical interludes, orgasms, and two memorable ejaculation scenes, but Mitchell has long countered the shock and awe with a reminder that the film is, at its heart, about the complexities of relationships. It truly is, by the way. Mitchell, the actor, writer, director, and producer best known for Hedwig and the Angry Inch, revisited his cult classic during back-to-back screenings Wednesday and Thursday. During the latter, attended by the Hollywood Reporter, Mitchell was joined by fellow panelists from the film, Stickles, Alan Mandel, and a performer who goes by the name Bitch. Moderator Manuel Betancourt kicked off the Q&A by asking how the project came to be. I'd seen a lot of films that had used real sex in the early 2000s, and they were interesting sometimes, but they were grim. And the sex was bad, explained Mitchell, of his motivation to bounce something more dynamic and daring. But because he knew that Hollywood stars would not sign on for such a project, he cast a wide net in early 2002 with a public casting call that asked interested parties to send in an audition tape that featured them talking about an emotional sexual experience, not unlike what Steven Soderbergh was doing in his film Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which was kicking off the indie film boom of the late 80s and 90s. From the submission, producers selected 40 participants for callbacks that included improvs, parties, and dances as a way to explore chemistry. We had a good time, he noted. They watched each other's tapes because I had to see who was into each other. The group was eventually whittled down to 9 actors who joined for a month-long workshop held in New York's East Village inside a rented loft. It was there that Mitchell shaped the story by using his actors as inspiration. The gay couple at the center of the story, Dawson and Du Bois, were a couple in real life, and Mitchell said they're still together now, living in witness protection in Florida, he joked. Lee, who plays a pre-orgasmic sex therapist on a quest to finally achieve a climax, is a Canadian multi-hyphenate who at the time nearly lost her job at the CBC due to the NC-17 action. Francis Ford Coppola, Julianne Moore, Gus Van Sant, Yoko Ono, David Cronenberg, Adam McGowan, and Michael Stipe wrote letters on her behalf that saved her hosting gig. It was ahead of its time in many ways, Mitchell said, of the way the film was received upon its rollout that began at the Cannes Film Festival and continued with other festival showings and an international release via Think Film. People say Hedwig was too. Hedwig was a flop in theaters and people found it later. Shortbus actually made a bit of money, but it wasn't a smash hit. People were still scared. It made $5.5 million worldwide, and Mitchell said he's glad to see it getting another run in theaters, particularly at this moment in time when he says a different kind of fear has emerged around sex. The reception will be tested as Shortbus opens in New York on January 26th, followed by screenings in February and March in Seattle, Iowa City, Denver, San Francisco, New Orleans, Irvine, Detroit, Cleveland, Portland, and Austin. There's a panic about sex now, he explained. In the past, it was more about the Christian religious right, and now there's a little bit more panic on the left. In the wake of Me Too and consent stuff, a lot of young people are starting to get really nervous about sex. It's almost as if any sex is happening, then someone is being exploited. We have a Puritan streak in our culture, and unfortunately, the rush to fix things that need to be fixed has besmirched the name of sex in general. It's almost like that writer Andrea Dworkin thing. If someone is being penetrated, someone is being hurt, which I have to disagree with, as I'm being fucked. Mitchell suggested that the film can be therapeutic for viewers in the way it was for him to create. I was brought up very Catholic, and so sex was a bad thing and queer sex was worse, he said. This was my own therapy as well to remind us that sex is a part of life. We think of the film as a relationship. It's front-loaded with sex, and by the end of it, it's the last thing you're thinking about, just like a relationship. He said that with a laugh before finishing with an earnest reflection on the film's artistic impact. There's deeper stuff going on. It's a good thing to see now when there's a little panic to do anything. Straight guys are not even sure if they could ever ask a girl out again without crossing a line, and they're not sure what that line is. There's so much tension about hurting, offending, or triggering. This is full of triggers. I love a trigger. Art is triggering in a good way. I love this bit. I love John Cameron Mitchell. So what do you think about what he has to say about all this?
Yeah, I think that he managed to capture a moment in time, I think, as far as I'm concerned, in New York, right after 9/11, where people were kind of doing things. I'm not going to say that they weren't engaging in sex, but perhaps they were committing more or getting into more intimate relationships now because, it felt like it was almost like the end of the world after the attacks.
Right.
And people were kind of saying things like, well, you're not promised tomorrow. And, if you had a significant other, you better make sure you kind of tie the knot now because, things could change tomorrow. And so with that being said, people were kind of engaging and taking chances on relationships and going ahead and doing things that they might have held back on or decided to, hold off until later. And so I think that what's great about this story is that we have a character who is kind of fed up with things not going her way. And while she has all the advantages to have things go her way, what's great about it is that as a sex therapist, having difficulty with sex, is such a great example of something that can happen to anyone. There isn't anybody who's completely, immune from having difficulty with having a relationship with someone, with having a sexual relationship with anyone, and also a sexual relationship with herself. I couldn't get that out for some reason.
Right.
And I think it's very interesting because she had to look inside to figure out what was going on and what was it. And, once she figured that out, she was on her way. She was, going in the right direction that was right for her. And you can see the chemistry in this film between the actors. They're not strangers. This is a group of people who kind of like each other. And, they feel comfortable being, obviously nude around one another, having sex or simulating sex around one another.
Which is part of that workshop, of what's so strange to me is like I grew up reading about all kinds of crazy shit that used to go on in the East Village or whatever the hell it was. Like New York to me was the cultural epicenter of crazy, and like when I was growing up, Bret Easton Ellis wrote about LA like it was the human apocalypse, the way people treated each other. It was already Dante's Inferno here in LA, but in New York, it was always this bastion of freedom that was completely destroyed by the AIDS epidemic, and all of this freedom and pushing the boundaries. Because to me, the fringe communities or whatever was what made culture vibrant. Whether you were talking about Lord Byron or you were talking about, the Stonewall riots or all the people that went to Studio 54. I mean, I always saw New York as being the ultimate, I guess, the Shangri-La of alternative culture. And it was something I've never lived in New York, and I've always wanted to. It's like the one thing in my life that I've always really wanted to do, live in New York City, but I would only want to live in New York City if I was rich. Because like I was telling you earlier, I mean, I want to be able to go to a great gym and buy Tom Ford clothes and live in a fabulous Upper East Side, like walk up and have fabulous parties and just be fabulous. I know all of the transgressive underground artists in New York.
Yes.
That's my dream. That's my New York dream.
I think this would be a great time to kind of live that life, since there are so many people who are kind of not admitting that they want to live that life. This is actually very right. But, let's say society is telling everyone, no, don't do that. No, these are bad ideas. And, I think going against the grain right now is something, that I think is fantastic as an artist. And I think it would bring out a lot of expression in whatever work an artist would be doing right now, since there's so many people who are trying to force people into sort of, particular categories. And art just doesn't work that way. You have to be able to kind of have the freedom to express yourself, and entertainment is not telling us that. Entertainment is telling us the opposite, that you have to fit into a package and have to be defined by a pronoun and all sorts of definitions. And the world just isn't really like that. And I think that that's very interesting, because I think the film kind of expressed that as well. Where people were kind of, boundaries were open, you can just kind of express yourself sexually. And one thing that they did say that I liked very much was that they said voyeurism is engaging like in sexual activity. And I really liked that they said that, because, even just watching, I'm not trying to tell people what they're doing, but, there's all sorts of behaviors associated with enjoying, sexual intimacy and sexual relationships. And of course, this is a visual medium. We're watching this because we want to see people enjoying themselves in a sexual relationship. So this, we can't lie about that. This is why we're here doing this. But we also can learn a lot about ourselves in something like this, because it's not a porn film. This is an actual film about intimate relationships and sexual relationships that's meaningful. This is not where, they're going into some place and putting quarters in to see other people have sex. It's a group of people who know and trust one another. And in this type of environment where they are safe and are willing to kind of explore and figure out what's going on for themselves, they make breakthroughs, and it's engaging and fun to watch the whole thing. There's so many elements and so many different types of relationships that, you really kind of, I'm not going to say it's eye-opening, but it's actually very satisfying to see that people are able to express themselves in different ways, and they needed to do it. This is something that, as individuals, this is what they needed to do in order for them to reach, a certain level of happiness. And so I think if this film shows us anything, it just shows the potential of a story that we like being told over and over again. We love to see stories that have sexual situations and have sex in them, and that's why we keep seeing stories like, a Benedetta coming out or Titane coming out. Because
by the way, I get my Blu-ray tomorrow.
Yes, and I haven't watched Benedetta yet because it's on Amazon, but I'm gonna watch it. I promised myself I was gonna watch it this weekend. And it's not just, from what I've seen from some of the descriptions of it, it's not just about lesbian sex in it. There's also some other very interesting elements of the story. Yeah. And I was kind of unaware of that, but I think it's also very interesting to look at. But, even the idea of exploring, the idea that these nuns have desires, they're just human beings like everyone else.
Everybody does. I mean, that's, and Verhoeven all the way back. Oh, Lael is here. Let me bring
Lael, how are you?
Let me bring in I don't know if you've heard much of the conversation, Lael, but it's actually been a pretty good conversation. And I'm going to bring the third, he always calls me the smoothest cat in the room, but that's not true. He just says that. He just says that because he wants to take the spotlight off himself. But I am happy to put the spotlight on this man because you want to talk about smooth, cool cats. There are few smoother or cooler cats that I've never actually met face to face. But you know him, you love him. He's the 1/6 scale man himself. He can pose you into any, so let me just say, I won't make any jokes about it, but he will pose your figures, he'll pose you, and it's Lael Rockwell, everyone, the 1/6 scale man himself. So, Lael, we've been talking about, John Cameron Mitchell, who made Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and he's a New York artist, he's a singer, he's a performer, an actor, a director, a writer, but basically we were talking about the notion of sexuality today in entertainment, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did want to make one point.
Yes.
What we were talking about is like when I was growing up, and I think when we were all growing up, sexuality was a big part of movies. And what's so strange now is I feel that all of sexuality in entertainment has been sort of bled out of entertainment, but everybody else has started OnlyFans accounts, and they've completely commodified their own sexuality. That all anybody does is like, well, come see me, I'll put on a new show for you. And on one hand, everybody's looking for acceptance, and everybody's trying to get their let's get LGBTQ rights out there. If you want to be non-binary, and everyone's talking about all of these intellectual concepts, but the actual joy of getting together with people you love and developing great, healthy relationships is now behind a paywall. And where we used to have eroticism and we had sensuality, and we could see real romance or things in movies, the eroticism has, I do feel that in a way, look, we all know I love my MCU movies, but they by definition, they've been completely bled. They have no erotic thread to them at all, and yet you're watching these beautiful people. Even like I look at the dudes. I look at Chris Hemsworth. I'm like, that man has spent a lot of time in the gym. He is a beautiful specimen. I'm as straight as they come. Even though I would consider myself gay adjacent, but I'm looking at Chris Hemsworth and I'm thinking, that guy. Look at that guy. And I look at Chris Evans. They are fantastically beautiful. And it's like, does anyone notice how hot Captain America really is? But has he kissed anyone except Peggy Carter when he went back in time? It's like poor Steve Rogers. I mean, he grows up as this scrawny dude, and then he takes the super soldier serum, becomes a hunka burning love, and he gets one kiss over how many movies? Like that man, like someone tells him he on his list he had to listen to Marvin Gaye. You know, what does it mean to let's get it on? Poor Steve Rogers doesn't even know, and it's like, that's kind of weird. I mean, where's the music? Growing up with rock and roll, half of rock and roll songs are either about love, sex, broken affairs, missing girlfriends. You know, I was listening to John Cougar Mellencamp today on NPR, the ballad of Diane and whom? You know,
Jack and Diane.
Jack and Diane.
Jack and Diane, yeah.
He's 70 years old now. I'm like, John Cougar Mellencamp is 70. And, you know, he's sitting there talking about everyone's lied to you your whole life. And he did a duet with Bruce Springsteen on his new album, which sounds actually pretty great. And I'm like, listening to this, and I'm like, John Cougar Mellencamp is 70? You know what he smokes so many cigarettes. He's talking about how his voice has changed and stuff. And I'm like, man, have we bled out all of our passion from our culture, our pop culture? Have we become so infantilized and so scared of like, I mean, when I was a teenager, the greatest thing in the world you could do is kiss a girl and maybe touch her boob. I mean, that was like the most exciting thing you could. If that was the greatest thing ever, you could one graze across a breast could last you a year. You could dine off that for a year, man.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nowadays, does that even happen? Yeah. Does anybody when you can go on and log on to any website and see whatever you want? Does anyone want? Does that even happen anymore? And I think our entertainment is reflecting that. And John Cameron Mitchell, you know, made this movie Shortbus in 2006, and before that, Hedwig and the Angry Inch. He seems like somebody. He's like Yoda compared to what we're getting now. Like he's like a guru. Like, and now we're living in a time where, my God, what happened to rock and roll, man?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, the article talks about triggering, and, you know, there's actual real fear in this, something that I don't think anybody could have anticipated, of this fear. And, you know, it's affecting so many things in our society now. An artist who wants to produce work like this on this level about sexuality, about sex, you know, like, for example, Benedetta, you know, which deals with nuns in a sexual manner. You know, this is something that, you know, I think this director was just going to make, and there was nothing that was going to stop him, but a new director, someone who's new in the business, trying to make it and wants to do something like this, might rethink what they want to do, because they're frightened that their work won't get made and that they'll get criticized for going down a road. But perhaps that's their forte, you know, like in this director's, niche is things of a sexual nature.
Paul Verhoeven, you know, all the way back in one of his first movies, Business is Business, he made it in the late, I mean, this is the man that made RoboCop, you know, and Total Recall, and, well, of course, Basic Instinct. But if you look in his oeuvre, he made Turkish Delight, which is this passionate, crazy, romantic story. And because he's Dutch, his films were always sexually explicit, all the way back to Business is Business. And yet, you know, he had to go when he made Elle, his last film with Isabelle Huppert and now Benedetta. I remember I've actually met him on not numerous, but I've met him 3 times in my life. And the first time I met him was at the Seattle Film Festival after he showed his first English language movie, Flesh and Blood. And no one was talking to him at the closing night party. And they had brought his precursor to Basic Instinct. He made a Dutch thriller. Please, people, why isn't this movie on Blu-ray? He made a movie called The Fourth Man that is about a writer who is bisexual, and he goes to speak up at like this beautiful coastal community, and he runs into Renee Stoutzendijk, who is a very beautiful woman, but she also has a boyish quality, who may or may not have killed her last 3 husbands. And he's attracted to her boyfriend, and he's attracted to her. And I saw this movie. I think it came out in '82. I saw this movie. This movie blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God! There's fantasy sequences where he sees the boyfriend up on the cross in a church, and fillets him, and I'm like, oh my God. But it was all dreamy, and I'm watching this going, one, I was like, I think I'm a little young to see this, but two, I'm like, but no, I'm really not, because I was reading horror novels and I was really reading transgressive stuff, and I'm like, half the things I was watching, and I'm talking about between the time I was like, I would say 11 and 16. I was watching all the most transgressive stuff I ever watched, and now I would get canceled simply if someone looked at if I was 11, between 11 and 16, and you could find out what I was watching based on my Amazon list, somebody would get it and publish it, and I would get canceled. And now I feel like I don't even know, like it's almost like all the discussion that we have about culture is to divide us. Like we're not supposed to be close to each other. Like they've made it so. I'm glad I don't have to date as a teenager or as a man in my 20s, because I'm like, like I don't want to like do anything. Like I don't even want to like get in your personal space because I would piss you off. I don't want to. It's so weird.
Well, what about a film like Titan, which I still don't know if both of you have seen, but
I have not.
I did.
As far as I'm concerned, I feel like it mixes body horror and sexual situations together.
Yeah.
And so, like if you like those sorts of things, you will love Titan. It is not like I said, it's not a family friendly film, but boy, it's a nice roller coaster ride, and it has an ending that is satisfying. And I didn't know how this film was going to end, but when it ended, I just was like, thank you, God. It was so wonderful. But my point is that you have an individual like that, and she's made other films. The woman who
made her first film, Raw, knocked me out. I mean,
yes.
It's a cannibal zombie movie, basically.
And so someone with that level of talent, she's so talented, but she certainly has like a very specific niche that she tends to go towards. And you wouldn't want to see somebody like her with that talent stymied or stifled, or told, you can't put that in there. Like that would seem ridiculous.
Well, she's French. They'll never tell her. I mean, I feel like in this country, we are being infantilized politically, socially, sexually, everything about our culture. I feel like we are, I honestly believe this, not as a conspiracy thing. We are being taken apart systematically by bad actors on every level, where we are being, rather than explore what it means to be human, what it means to be part of a community, what it means to be part of a country, a town, whatever, we are being systematically attacked, and I think by foreign and domestic bad actors who are hell-bent on making sure that we in America, because this is not happening the same way around the rest of the world. It's specific to America because the American spirit is unique. Our democracy is unique, which means it can be used against us. And we have not been ever vigilant. And I think that our relationships with one another are being torn asunder. And we are being made to be afraid of simply talking to one another and communicating. And one of the things I like about our little YouTube community is we are talking to each other. Like Lael, I mean, we've been sharing our action figure love and all that, but action figures are a metaphor for what our larger concerns are. Like, I think it means if you like action figures, this might seem strange to say, but it means you like people. You have a love, and you know that people can be.
You like the human anatomy.
Yeah, you
have
well,
a love
yeah,
for
you
the
like
anatomy.
you love, but I mean, yes, you have a love for human anatomy, but also just characters. What we're and the thing is, if you love science fiction, fantasy, and horror, if you love comic book characters, it's because you have an inherent desire to see us do good.
Yeah, that
we are good people, and I feel that it's so strange that on YouTube. I mean, we've dealt lately with some negative vibes in that community, but for the most part, we're celebrating our love of aspirational entertainment.
Yeah.
We are, and the other thing that I was going to say is that the article makes a good point of expressing the fact that while there have been other films that focused on intimacy and sexual relationships, a lot of them were films where the sex was bad or the relationships were really bad and things were horrible. And, I think if it's going to be entertaining, there has to be some sort of, light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, even with the challenges that may arise. And, he made it a point to show sexual situations that were great, that look good, but they don't look like you're in the middle of a porn film.
No.
This was done in a way that had, I think anybody would be comfortable walking into this room and seeing what's there. And people are very relaxed and they're very calm. They're not, invading your privacy or anything. And they actually, something that I also thought was very interesting was that when some of the main characters entered the Shortbus place, people were generally concerned about them. They wanted to know who they were and, how are you? And this was kind of very interesting because I think that when you talk about we're not having that connection anymore with other people, it's like asking somebody, well, how are you doing today? How are things? People are afraid to ask these questions or to get too close to even ask just the basic things. How are you feeling today? How's your family? Like what's going on with you? In a forum like that, you would expect someone to ask you how you are and, like what's concerning you and what are some of the things that are going on with you personally, because that's why you're there. You're not just there to have, sexual relationship. You're there also to have an intimate relationship. And with that goes a relationship where you need to speak to someone and have that, communication, that verbal communication. And they do that even when they're not even engaging with sexual intimacy with one another, just as a general concern for everybody who's there. And I really like that. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to this place? Because there's that sort of atmosphere. I think a lot of people could really benefit from something like that. So
yeah, like John Cameron Mitchell says, he goes, ultimately this movie is about relationships. I gotta say, Lael, one of the things I love about like your presence on social media is you're the only person that I know who celebrates romantic love every single day. Mm-hmm. Like you post your boy, she's a beautiful woman. But the two of you, whenever you put up a picture, was it today, of the two of you, it was a very romantic, very sexy, but very loving photograph at the same time. And I'm like, these are two beautiful people that are madly in love with each other. Mm-hmm. And I like see those pictures you put up, and you're like, you put them up because you're celebrating everything. But for me, from an outsider, from somebody who's made films, I look at what I'm seeing and I see real emotion. I see real passion. It's not lascivious in any way. It's just beautiful. And you're celebrating, like the two of you make no qualms about the fact that we're in love. We're in love like in a classical 1940s movie way. Like we're having an incredible romance and you're celebrating it, and it always puts a smile on my face. And I have to ask you, how are you able to do that in this day and age?
You know what? I think. All right. So for instance, this is a crazy conversation. It's kind of good that it came up because we had this conversation like today. Early today, we watched the Batman trailer. So we watched it. She found out because we had a conversation about the length, the time, and she was the one who felt as though the movie needed to be at the length it was, that they said it was.
It's gonna be like The Godfather, dude. It's gonna be epic.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not even prepared.
Exactly. So she felt as though it needed to be at this length to tell the story correctly, because she's a huge Catwoman fan. But the reason why, she said, because she felt as though Zoe Kravitz should have that space to breathe as a character, as a female character, and also to not just the conversation of just her as a strong female, but also to display the simple fact that she can be and unapologetically sexy and strong at the same time.
Yeah.
If you look at her costume in this film, it is skin tight. it does basically show the female anatomy, but it's not objectifying her.
No.
It's just showing the simple fact that she is a strong female, but extremely beautiful, sexy, as the character should be displayed. The thing is, I think that right now, like for us, from her and I, like I said, we have the freedom to basically express who we are as a couple in reality, because it's more so us being who we are, and people who know us know that this is, how the way we live our lives in reality in public, outside of social media, is who we are, every single day. You know what I mean? The biggest thing is, like, now we live in a world where it's always the fear of being objectified, like plain and simple. Like it's the feeling of being objectified and looked at a certain way, and sexuality is suffering because of that. Because right now it's just like people, and especially now, they want to steer past being looked at as the damsel in distress and always being looked at as the sexy character, but not being looked at as the sexy character who is strong at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, it's like really, really lost in that type of translation. Like when we watched what was the movie called? The last Terminator, the Dark Fate,
Dark
or whatever.
Fate,
yeah. Like, what is her name? The actress
Mackenzie Davis.
Mackenzie Davis is extremely beautiful, bro. Like, she is,
and very unique looking.
She's very uniquely.
She can be nerdy in the Martian, and then she can be kick ass.
Yeah,
or she can be in what was that show that she was in with Lee Pace?
Yeah,
the forget what it's called. They were starting a tech company.
Yeah, it's called.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but I love Lee Pace too.
Yeah,
she made a comment like in an interview, and they were talking about how, how did she when she approached the character, did she want to not overly sexualize the character and whatever? She was like, you know what, to be quite honest, she said, I wanted to make the character sexy, and I felt as though, always felt that the character should actually have had a relationship, like literally have a Terminator. She said, because we haven't really seen the Terminator have a really intimate relationship with humans or humanity or stuff like that. She said, I would have loved to see that. She said, I would have loved to see, like, a team, or a half, or Cyborg herself, have a sexy, relationship with a male. But she said, in today's society, they would probably look at that as being, okay, she's a female who has to be objectified as, very sexually over-sexualized, whatever. And she's like, that's why I feel as though we're not in touch with humanity, because we think this way. And I was like, yo, that's true. Like, it really, really is, because people are so afraid to cross that particular line because we're so focused on narratives now.
Well, I mean, I think anybody that's had a successful, long-term, intimate relationship knows that one of the greatest things that you can have is have a partner who knows how to touch you the way you want to be touched.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when you really think about it, like, we in America, we annex our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I hold my hand up and be like, oh man, I love to itch myself right in the webbing of my, this feels so good. Oh my God, it feels so good. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if I reach down somewhere and be like, oh, then it's not fine.
No.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a weird thing. Like, right now I can feel like it's scratchy here on my beard. I'm like, oh my God, that feels so good. If I touch myself somewhere else, that's not cool.
Mm-hmm.
And we're weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're a bizarre bunch of folks.
Yeah.
And when you really think about it, being touched by another human being, we were designed to like that.
Yeah.
Like, and when you're with somebody that knows exactly how you like to be touched, and the only way you can do that is with somebody that you trust, that they trust you, and all that, is an amazing thing. And now I feel like we're living in a society where I used to think that, you would, one of the things about people talk about traditional marriage, men and women, one of the things about traditional marriage in our weird puritanical society is it allowed us to have partners where we could go behind closed doors and have the kind of intimacy that human beings crave. And nowadays, it's like everything about healthy relationships has been completely thrown away.
Yeah.
Completely thrown away.
Yeah.
In our culture. I mean, and now literally, it's very funny. I never thought I would live in a world because I never, people would call it that, oh, I had white privilege growing up. And I'm like, I never thought I had privilege. I just thought that I was living in a society that was evolving into something better than it was before I got here. And I was hoping it would be better than it would be when I got here, when I left. You know, I get maybe how much time? Hey, if I'm lucky so far, I'm half a century plus old. That's awesome. So I'm thinking I'm living on borrowed time. But hey, my grandfather lived to be 97. If that I got another 50 years ago or whatever, great. I can't wait to see where we're going to go. But I really do feel in the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, our culture has literally gone off a cliff like the Roadrunner. And we are flailing in midair. And I'm like, wait a minute, you guys, we were on a road. It was all good. It was slowly going further, and now I feel like our entire civilization, at least American civilization, between why wouldn't you want to pass? Why are there Democrats that don't want voting rights and they want to preserve the filibuster? Like why? Like why isn't one of the most basic things in America is that everybody gets to vote? And yet gerrymandering and all this, it's like, what are you trying to preserve? And now we can't even, the United States, our inability, our division makes us, here's the thing, we look weak around the rest of the world. The rest of the world is looking at us going, America, talk about paper tiger, we're not even a tiger at all. We're like a paper nothing. A paper tiger can at least go somewhere, or a paper airplane can fly. Our country is paralyzed.
Yeah.
And look, they have not watched The Godfather enough in this country, because one of the great lessons of The Godfather is never let anyone outside the family know what you're thinking. Yeah. We have broadcasted to the world on a daily basis how completely ineffectual and completely paralyzed we are. We can't even decide that our own democracy is worth preserving.
Well, one thing, Tom Jr. Jackson says, think about it. Some parts of the world have no problem with sex and nudity. And yet here in the U.S., if a nipple is showing, it is all hands on deck and the world is coming to an end. And I think that that's the first step, as far as I'm concerned, is the nudity thing, where like after 8 o'clock, on television anywhere in the United States, you should be able to see nudity. And it doesn't matter what kind of nudity it is. If it's an adult, you know, we should just have it and just be like the rest of the world. So I think for me, that would be the first step. And it would, you know, carry on in films and TV or whatever. But Robert, you have some super chats here that people are sending in tonight.
It is true. I just want to say, Lisa says, we're a republic, not a democracy. You are correct. And it's always important to remember that. And by the way, here's another thing I don't like about the United States. We are still persecuting Janet Jackson for her wardrobe malfunction, when really all of us would love to have seen her nipples. I mean, come on. Give me a break.
I always thought it was part of the show.
You know what? You know why? Because we're a rhythm nation. That's why. Michael Elliott says, hey, Robin, just a suggestion. How about the name Midnight Mega Talk? Covers all genres. Lael, I have to tell you, this is the last episode of Midnight Metal. I am rebranding this show. Next week is our 75th episode. I was going to call it, I think we'll call it Midnight Madness. Or I was thinking about, what did I say? Midnight Talk. It's whatever. It's not metal. It's more intellectual.
That's right.
So, RRTNZ, who, by the way, is a great guy. I love when he comes into the chats. I've loved to meet him. He's always got this great, beautiful New Zealand sky behind him when he's in the member chats. Hail, Rob and Lael. Knowing Rob is a fan of international film and TV, I'd like to recommend Midnight Diner. You are not the first to recommend that. Midnight Diner is a Japanese show on Netflix, a very charming show. That went in twice. I need to watch that. I can't wait to see that. By the way, Ozark season 4 dropped today. I haven't watched any of it. I can't wait.
Yes.
I'm trying to finish Archive 81, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. Tom Jr. Jackson says, "Do you think that we're heading to Soylent Green?" I'll tell you something interesting. When mad cow disease was a thing, I'm obsessed. I love plagues and viruses, and even before the pandemic. And I was obsessed with mad cow disease, or, as it's also known, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, BSE.
Mm-hmm.
And the first instance of BSE, or mad cow disease, they found was in a tribe. I want to say it's in New Guinea. And they had a practice when someone died, like a tribal elder died, they would eat their brain.
Yes.
And I don't mean to be morbid, but that's just what they would do. And they do. So what would happen is mad cow disease is caused by something called a prion, which is it's a protein that has a shell around it, basically, like ice. And if a prion gets into your brain, it crystallizes a part of your brain the same way an ice crystal will turn water into ice. So they don't know how prions are caused, and prions, even fire doesn't destroy them. So if you get a prion, and there is evidence to support the idea that if you engage in cannibalistic behavior, such as if you feed cows to if you render cows, which means they turn cows into feed and then feed them back to cows, that could cause mad cow disease within them.
Right.
They
It's
don't
a remnant feed because cows are supposed to eat, plants.
grass.
Only.
Yeah.
They're grass-fed
And
animals,
so
but
they don't really know. So basically it's a bastardization of nature by man. And when I read this book, I was totally this book scared the shit out of me, to be honest. And the book was called Deadly Feasts, and I read it, and the way they made it sound like, in 2020 there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people dying in England of mad cow disease. Well, that of course didn't happen. But when I hear Soylent Green, are we heading to Soylent Green, which is Soylent Green's people? That people will eventually be used to feed others. Well, I would hope that we wouldn't go that way, because ultimately, I don't think it's beneficial if we eat each other. I mean, from a perspective, for nothing else, then maybe it causes mad cow disease. I don't know, but it could.
I think he meant it as a metaphor for, they're kind of taking any kind of expression or pleasure, because normally you would be eating food that would be pleasurable to you. So if you take that away and you just kind of, while it's true Soylent Green is people, just even imagine just something that doesn't have, now they're going to say you can't eat certain types of food. You absolutely cannot.
But I think in that future, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, the movie Soylent Green, which everyone should watch, I highly recommend it. Soylent Green, which was made in the early 70s, takes place in 2022.
Charlton Heston.
And there's a lot of they actually call women furniture in that movie. And Ron Grenier,
she came with the apartment. That's why
she came with the apartment. And the man who wrote the music score, which is a really interesting jazzy score, he actually also wrote the theme to Doctor Who. So if you haven't seen Soylent Green, check it out. I mean, 70s sci-fi is ripe for rediscovery. Soylent Green, the original Rollerball with James Caan from 1975, directed by Norman Jewison. Very much worth checking out. Joshua Gonzalez says, one problem I see is that no one has time for a relationship. It's all just, if I'm bored, I'll just swipe left, and it feels dead. Is romance dead? No, it's not. It's not dead in the rest of the world. And I don't mean to romanticize the rest of the world, but, I've been around, not as much as I would have liked, but Lal, you've lived around the world too.
Listen, in Australia, sexuality is exploited every single day. like seriously, no matter what time on television, like literally. So I think that, you know what, I was just thinking about this, like us coming up in the 80s, like literally,
Me too.
when we came up, we had films like, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Last American Virgin. We
Yeah.
had basically Porky's. We had all of these films.
Dude,
that
those would they all get canceled now.
they would all get canceled now. But the thing is, with those, if the one thing that those films
And yet
actually
Euphoria is cool.
exactly right, exactly. So you basically, like, we can enjoy films about drug induced coma and just like just fantasizing drug use amongst the youth and young community. It's like, it was crazy, because if you watch Euphoria and you watch what the show is basically about, okay, yes, it may have sexuality in it from a certain standpoint, but it's about drugs. It's about kids using drugs and how they fantasize this and romanticize drug use. But then at the end of the show, they talk about, okay, drug prevention and stuff like that. And I'm like, what? Literally, there's nothing that says that in the show. But it's crazy that, we don't have the shows or the movies that we used to have when we were young, because if anything, those shows taught us it wasn't just about sexuality. It was about relationship. It was about basically gaining, like for us, we gained crushes on some of the actresses and actors that were in the films. It taught us basically how to enjoy, like, just the pleasures of reality, you know what I mean? And just, wanting to basically be around your girlfriend, wanting to have your first kiss, wanting to touch, wanting to go to from first, second to third base. Like, it taught you about those things, and we enjoyed it because those were conversations that we had out. Once we saw the film, we can have those conversations the next day. I mean, who as a kid, especially who experienced things the way I did, would actually go to bed, wait till your family went to sleep so you could sneak downstairs and turn on After Dark or Cinemax or Skinemax and stuff like that?
Or, dude, my first girlfriend that I was, getting busy with, I would sneak out. I would climb out the bathroom of my house onto the roof, jump off the roof, get on my bike, and I had to ride like 3-4 miles, climb into her bedroom. We would mess around for hours, and like 2 or 3 in the morning, I would leave. I had to go all the way uphill, get back to my house, and then I had to climb up on my fence, climb up on the roof, and go back into the bathroom and get into my bedroom.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of work involved. It was worth it. Thank you, Jennifer. I mean, it was worth it.
Work. Right?
And we're still friends now. And by the way, she looks fucking fantastic. Amazing. Good for you, Jennifer. But it was, and I treated you badly in high school, and I'm sorry. But I mean, to tell that kind of a story now, like, I would love to tell that story. And now I feel like it's so weird, because why is everything adversarial? Like, look, I never thought that I would literally, maybe I should have known when I watched Die Hard and Hans Gruber was the villain. I never thought, as a middle-aged white cis male, that I am the ultimate societal villain in America. Not only that, but if I apply for a job, I'm not wanted. Like, I like, it's so weird to me. I'm like, wow, because I still have a mentality of a 12-year-old. Like, what do you mean? I'm 12. I'm not middle aged. What are you talking about? I'm like, come on, let me show you. I got so toys today in the mail. Come on, it's such a weird place to be, and I feel our entire culture, all of America, is in a weird place.
Well, what's interesting about the movie, the Shortbus film, is that we need a version of this for one that happens sort of like that, addresses pre and during and maybe post-pandemic version of it. I think that would be great to have something. I wish someone would make something like that, or maybe he's working on something like that. But it would be great to see a film like that isn't limited, doesn't have limitations, where people aren't afraid to go ahead and just put the phone down. And even though you saw me with my phone, I'm just responding to messages anyway, but, put the phone down during these intimate acts and address it in a modern way, because I would like to think that we have even more understanding about sex and intimacy now. Even though people may not be engaging in sex and intimacy and the frequency that, perhaps they could, I'd like to think that, on the whole, that society, even though they may not like to see certain things, the truth is that they still engage in sexual activity and want that intimacy. So, since we've all had challenges over the past few years. It's been a very difficult time for many of us. That has to have changed us somehow in the way we make relationships. So it'd be great to see a film that would reflect that.
Yeah. I it's funny because to me, we've now organized our society in a way where, before the idea was that you could sit in front of somebody nose to nose and you could each stroke each other's face and look into someone's eyes and have a conversation that close and have that and be able to touch one another together. We've completely gotten rid of that idea. Like, we all want it, but our society's been structured. Someone in the chat says just swipe left. So these ideas that you're gonna have like these hookups with people you don't know, or go home and watch RedTube or YouPorn or Pornhub or OnlyFans or ChatterBait or whatever the hell you're going to look at, and you're literally looking at a screen with another human being there, who in a way is performing because they need the money to pay their rent. And we have how many women have turned to mothers, single mothers have turned to OnlyFans, and they have to then. It's so funny. On one hand, we're talking about gender roles and things, and we're trying to make, well, you're a TERF or you're this or you're that, and yet how many mothers have turned to OnlyFans to make money? No one's out there going, well, that's too bad. They're
It's
like,
sex
you're
work. It is sex work.
I know it's absolutely sex work, and yet our society is completely ignoring how the commoditization of sexuality has become the norm, and yet everyone's like, you're not being fair to all of these other people, and you're not calling me by my right pronouns. I'm like, wait, aren't you more worried about the fact that a single mom is turning to OnlyFans and selling herself to pay for her child's food? Like, no one's and people are like, no, that's feminism. It's such a we live in a bizarro, and look,
a weird space.
I have no problem with anyone making a living. Sex workers, we should mandate that shit and make sure they're healthy. We shouldn't criminalize it. We should make sure that anybody who's doing that, give them other countries do. There's a lot of countries where it's decriminalized or whatever.
I always thought that when they and Lael and I remember what 42nd Street used to look like, because we were here, during that time when it was kind of like very sleazy. And what I thought was that rather than completely doing away with it being an adult area, is that just to modernize it, make it where it's legal, get rid of all those old, junky, horrible places and make it a safe environment like what they did in Amsterdam. So that,
make the government. Australia
area for that.
Prostitution was legal. I mean, I literally, when I lived on the apex of Darlinghurst Road and King's Cross, I mean, I could walk down the street and half the clubs that I was blocks away from were legal brothels. And it was all licensed, and it was all it took me a while to really, even though like I would go to these places and there were multiple stories and you go have drinks in the bars there. It was like being, and you wouldn't realize people come up to you, girls would come up to you, hey, how are you? And you think, oh man, I'm doing awesome. I mean, I'm married. And she's like, it's okay. Is your wife here? And then I'm like, wow, this is weird. And then someone's like, Rob, they tap me on the shoulder. They're like, this is a brothel. This is just, I didn't know. I'm like, well, it's like Arthur. Arthur in the movie, he's like in 81, one of my favorite comedies. Arthur's like, are you a hooker? I just thought I was doing really great with you. It was that kind of thing. I'm like, I wasn't even looking for that. I'm just having a pint. Girl's like, hi, how are you? And I'm like, and wow,
I'm doing good tonight.
And then of course, by the end of the time I was in Australia, I knew everyone. Same thing was true when I was in Bulgaria. When we were making Hills Run Red, there were two bars in our hotel. There was the normal bar, and then the piano bar. And the piano bar was open late, and it was awesome. It was run by this great Russian mobster who I loved. He would sit there and he would watch American gangster movies, but he didn't speak any English. And I would go run lines with him, and he was... But what I didn't realize, because I was slow on the uptake, we were shooting a horror film, so I'd come in at really weird hours. And one day, this girl comes up to me, that I've been talking to for months. She's like, "You have never asked me up to your room." And I'm like, "Well, I have a girlfriend at home. I don't. What can I say?" And she's like, "Well, she is not here. Why don't you?" And I didn't understand. I was like, "Oh, this is a brothel." I just thought everyone liked me, and I was getting everyone baseball hats from the movie, and it's a whole new world. You just don't know, man. It's a whole, and I don't think Americans have a real grasp on the rest of the world.
We've been drained, man. Like literally, like we've been drained of even just like conversations of sexuality we've been drained. Like, it's now that we live in a world of pronouns and you know what I mean, the Me Too's of the world and stuff like that. It's just like, we've been drained of sexuality without it becoming one of those things where, a person's becoming a target or labeled a target, just for expressing and being expressive, in whether it's in film, reality, and stuff like that. Especially, we don't see it as much, we definitely don't see it as much in films, anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that was basically a part of human growth, was sexuality. Like,
I did too.
And it being explored without, feeling as though you're doing something horribly wrong or something to target. Like, if a female is being exploited or a male is being exploited and stuff like that. I never thought that we would have those sorts of conversations now. Now you see that even like, for instance, in film, like, in some of the action films that we basically see now. Whereas like, especially some of the, especially in the comic book genre now, that, there is no sexuality to be explored in some of these female comic book characters. Like they want to make sure that the suit is heavily padded, that all sorts of, of the body language is not there anymore. That's the thing, is like the body language between a man and a woman in some of these films is completely gone. Like, and it's because they want one particular, like, look, who says that a female, literally, I keep saying it's like that she can't be sexy, extremely sexy and strong at the same time. Like, why is that, bro?
Dude, I got to tell you, when Infinity War came out, and you're dealing with the fact that the aftermath of Civil War, and Natasha and Steve Rogers had been on the run, and I was on Collider Heroes, and I'm like, if you look closely at Infinity War, they have a relationship. Steve Rogers and Black Widow, they were fucking. They were together. They were on the run. They were comrades in arms, and they were fighting for years. They were fighting for years, and they had mutual respect. And it was like, and people were looking at me, and they're like, going, "Come on, how can you say that?" I'm like, They were looking for comfort. That's what adults do.
She was always trying to match up people with people. She was always doing that. She's like, well, what about this person? You like this guy? And I'm like, good. Like,
yeah. And I'm just like, people are like, well, Mark Ruffalo, like, well, what about the relationship she had with? No, dude.
Remember that, but you remember they got with that relationship that was explored in the Age of Ultron.
Dude,
they got pushback because of that. She got pushback from the community because they felt as though that she was being dumbed down as a female character, and that she was a damsel in distress, and that the relationship that she had between her and Banner shouldn't have actually happened. I'm like,
dude,
what?
She was abused. She was a victim of abuse, and the idea that here's what I can't stand. I cannot stand the fact that our human characters are infantilized, that we want our characters in the MCU to be as infantilized as 4-color characters on the pages of a comic book are. Mm-hmm. And I hate the fact that the MCU characters, and I honestly believe, and look, I loved Eternals. Mm-hmm. And
they have a love scene in that.
And do I think it's the best movie in the world? No. I think it's deeply flawed because it's a Disney movie and it's the MCU movie. But you know what? Kevin Feige is a fucking baller to even get that movie made. Yeah. And I think there's a lot more going on. Was it perfect? No. Mm-hmm. The reason why I think there's a lot of pushback, because it's a movie that it was not allowed to do what Chloe Zhao would love to have done with it because it's still in the MCU. But on the other hand, there's a lot of really interesting things going on there. Like, if you wanted to talk about Sprite being in love with Icarus, that was definitely in the movie.
That was obvious. We were all in love. I'm in love with Icarus.
Me too. And I'm straight. But you look at that and you're like, it was in there enough. Do you think Chloe Zhao wouldn't want, like, part of the reason, she was Team Icarus. She loved him and she was never allowed to grow up, and that whole opening scene, like the whole scene, the scenes that they cut out that we've seen online with Dane and her, like in the museum when she's like, so are you going to move in with Cersei and all this? Yeah. She's the Venom. She's like, I'm thousands of years old, but because of the body that I'm in, I can't have a relationship with an adult on this planet. Yeah. And they did it, those scenes that were cut out, like that scene in particular, that's some edgy shit for the MCU. They could never deal with that. They could never, but you could make an entire movie, and it's in vampire movies. It's in Near Dark. It's in Interview with a Vampire. When someone is arrested development they look like a child, and yet they're thousands of years old. They're wiser than any human being, but they're like, I just want to have a relationship with someone, but I can't because I understand the way I look is anathema to any human being. And that is some really heady stuff. And they did it as much as they could in that movie. Yeah. And I thought the fact that they even touched on it at all was really audacious.
Hey, you know what, Rob? Hence why The Watchmen will go down as one of the greatest cinematic experiment of all time. Like, literally, when you can
You mean the TV show or the movie?
No, I'm talking about the movie.
Okay.
When basically you can free a group of individuals from a burning building, and then because it's so euphoric, you have sex afterwards, like on a daggone ship. Like, literally, it's explored.
But I would say that's Alan. I would say that's Alan Moore, though. That was in the comic, though.
Yeah, but at the same time, it was explored on film. Like, literally explored on film, and that level, there was no getting beyond that. You could not have had that scene in that film and thought that you can get away with it. Like, literally, it was great, and I was glad to see something like that explored in that film. Say what you want. It was it was great to actually see.
They had a lot of sex in The Watchmen and different situations. And Spectre had sex with different men, and sometimes she had sex with two men at the same time. Yeah. It was. I felt a great interpretation of The Watchmen. For the time period. We really hadn't seen anything else like that before.
I just love the humanity in that film. I love, because look, we know basically it was in the comics, and basically it was heavily explored in the comics. But I love the simple fact that it was adapted on film and it showed humanity, which is mainly, like I said, sexuality is humanity. It's humane, and people just I don't get it.
Well,
I've never got that, bro.
Lisa Roberts says that we're dehumanizing. We're dehumanizing ourselves.
Like you, the three of us, or in general?
In general.
No, I think we are, and it's bizarre. It's what I find so interesting now is I never thought, like, I used to think that America, we might have different points of view, but at the end of the day, we all believed in the basic tenets of this country. You know, I mean, despite the fact our history of subjugating people and all that, but the founding fathers did understand the Bill of Rights. All men are created equal. You know, they knew that somehow that at the time, race, gender, creed, whatever, they might not have believed in it, but they did believe, they knew ultimately that all human beings are created equal. They got it. They understood that. And the thing is, you can't blame them for the time they lived and the norms. It wasn't like somebody could be a revolutionary and say, well, Galileo, you're wrong. You know, we're going to jail you because the sun revolves. The earth is the center of the universe. I mean, people didn't know shit. They didn't get it. But there were great thinkers, even maybe better thinkers than now, because they read. The statesmen had to have read. They were smart motherfuckers. They really were. And when they said all men are created equal, they knew somewhere when they wrote that, they might have thought that some human beings weren't at the time, but they actually kind of did. And they didn't, you know, guys like Lincoln, who was a Republican, was fighting the Democrats that were standing up for slavery. Lincoln said, fuck you guys. And he stood up and he said, this is wrong. The British did. The British said it was wrong. You know, there are other people that and nowadays people forget slavery existed. When you conquered a land, slavery was part of human civilization for thousands of years. It didn't just show up. I mean, it's thousands of years. And then someone stood up and said no. You know, Lincoln stood up and said no. Well, the same thing is true now, where you know, we are going through a period of time where I think we've lost the plot. You know, we've lost the narrative, and the narrative should always be what is best for us as people. What helps us evolve as intellectual, spiritual, sexual, emotional beings? What can help all of us?
Is real quick, is sex education still taught in high school?
No,
it's not.
No, it isn't. Not the way we had it when we were growing up. Tom Jr. Jackson says, we live in a society where a guy can film a sex act, and if the woman pisses the guy off, he posts it online to get back at her. This is not love. That is being a petty person. And Latoya T says, these things have been hijacked. Real intimacy, unfortunately. It's so easy to engage that any worthy, meaningful, intimate, and sexual engagement costs too much and takes too much work and is thus abandoned.
That is so sad, because the work is the point. That's the point. Latoya's she's a very wise woman.
Yeah.
But that's I mean, the whole point is the work. It's the exploration. You know, it's the task. I mean, real true intimacy, especially like I when you get to know somebody and you're invited in to their space and they're sharing who they are with you, there's no greater gift.
Yeah.
You know, to have that kind of thing, and sexuality is just another part. It's just another exploration. I mean, mentally, you have to. The best is when you understand someone's likes and dislikes and things. I mean, you look, if you even understand that as a man, if you understand the woman that you're with loves when you walk up behind her, you hold her waist, not hard, barely, and blow on the back of her neck. You know that's something she loves. And that's something you've learned, that very act. And if you really like doing it, to have that on a daily basis, and then to have her turn around and kiss you because you've done that thing to her, come on, man. You know what I'm saying?
Mario Lopez says that Watchmen is still the best superheroes movies ever made to him, in his opinion. Yes.
I mean, just because here's the reason why is because there was no holds barred when it came to that film. That
Yes.
it explored every single thing. I mean, and like the thing is, like you were right, Rob. Like that's the interpretation was so closely related to the books itself, and what they were able to get away with in this film was incredible. But it's just that okay, that was the start of us getting back to what we would want to deem humanity. Like that's why, like when I look at like that particular film, when I look like when I look at such films that like Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch, I love that film. People just I loved the idea of Sucker Punch. I loved it so much, but it was still even pushed back with that film, and I'm like,
Well,
what
I
the
mean,
hell?
I have to say, dude, I have two hot toys from Sucker Punch.
Yeah, right.
I look at that film and I watch it. Elizabeth and I watch it for whining about movies, our movie review show, and when she was watching it, she kept stopping. And what is this bullshit? I mean, she was so, and I completely understood. I'm deeply conflicted about that movie. I mean, it is, the thing is that the story is interesting and it's about abuse and it's about women standing up for themselves, and yet
It still has sexuality.
but it's also wrapped in the male gaze to the nth degree. I think Sucker Punch has mixed messages.
All right, so it does. It has.
I'm
it
just
has
saying.
mixed- it has mixed-
I'm like, I can't
I
get
get that.
behind
I
it.
get that. It has mixed messages, and I'm not saying that the film itself, was kind of like bipolar in a sense. Like when I look at the film, it does have bipolar interest, but what I'm talking about is the sexual portions of it. Whereas the reason why I say it was great is because even though it showed how the women were standing up for themselves, they were still sexy doing it.
Yeah, but
they was-
but I think the argument could be made that they were sexy from the male gaze point of view. Like it was, I watched when I showed it to Elizabeth, because I have it on Blu-ray. When I showed it to her, she was angry. Like she was, as a mother and as a a woman and as a vibrant creative force, she was like, "What is this shit?" She was she really hated Sucker Punch, and that's kind of why I wanted to show it to her, because I was like, I know what you're going to think about this, and I want hello trigger, because I thought it would be interesting for a review show. But I mean, I do. Here's the funny thing. Here's what I find strange. I think that the male gaze can exist and not be toxic. And I think we now live in a world where we live in such a binary world on so many different levels where you can't, like, here's the thing. I think my favorite rock musician of all time is Prince. I am a monstrously huge, I think I've seen him live 30 plus times. God rest his soul. And one of the great things about Prince that nobody could really understood was he played with sexuality and spirituality. And he later became a Jehovah's Witness and would not swear. So he wouldn't sing like Erotic City or things like that. But what I loved about Prince was he did, especially when I was listening to him, when I bought 1999, that was my first, 1999, which was a double album, knocked me out, but not Delirious and not 1999. What knocked me out was side 2, which had two songs, DMSR and Let's Pretend We're Married. And I was like, wow, they changed my life, those songs. And the sexuality on display and the musicianship on display and just the funk and the beat, because they kind of have the same kind of beat, but DMSR, which is dance. Everybody get on the floor. What the hell did you come here for? Girl, it ain't no use. Might as well get loose. I mean, that song is and they used it in Risky Business right next to Muddy Waters' Mannish Boy. Yeah. Everything gonna be all right this morning. Oh, yeah. I mean, come on. And that Muddy Waters and Prince, I'm like, that's a night I want to have. So, you know, and it was, what I loved about Prince was he understood, like, he loved his ladies. He loved the sexuality. He loved the funk. He loved the grind. But on the other hand, you know, he could make a spiritual song, which is on the Black album, The Cross. You know, black day, lonely night, no love, no hope in sight. Don't cry, for he's coming. Don't die without knowing the cross. Wow, 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 wow. Man, I love that shit so much. I mean, I had to get. I spent $100 to get a bootleg of the Black album before it was released, and I love that album. But he was a dichotomy. Prince understood the dichotomy of human life, human existence, is that we yearned. I mean, Prince, he loved the ladies, but he also understood the spirituality, the nature of the human spirit. And it wasn't until he met Larry Graham from Graham's Central Station where he became a Jehovah's Witness. Because Larry Graham said, dude, you don't have to swear, you know. You're really good at what you do. And then Prince sort of had a revelation and became a Jehovah's Witness. But what I loved about him was he understood the dichotomy of the physical and the spiritual. And it was in constant flux or conflict in his music until he became a Jehovah's Witness, when he abandoned the overtly sexual side and embraced the spiritual side, which is fine. He still made great music.
Yeah. I don't know. I think like when I think about, you know, when we talk about like artists such as Prince, which, you know what I mean, he was just the he was just as iconic as he is, you know, in music, sexuality is still explored today. Like I think it's taken to like the umpteenth. Like, and it's different like with music, because basically it's the freedom to express yourself from a sexual point of view. Music is never going to actually stray away from that particular narrative.
Because it's the beat, it's the feeling.
Yeah, it's the
feeling,
you
hear
yeah.
It's about. I mean, it goes back to the. I'm sure when we were living in the Olduvai Gorge, you know, in Africa, and somebody started hitting a beat, like whether it was somebody beating on I can imagine a proto-human hitting a tree for the first time, going dum, 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 and as soon as rhythm hit, we were like, what, you know, and that rhythm, music and sexuality happened right then.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly are seeing more sexually explicit music videos than we've ever seen before.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to continue to see that. Like, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Like, you can't stray away from that when it comes to music, because rhythm and sexuality are so closely connected. Like, that's just basically the way it is. Like, you know, you can't get away from that in music. That's why, like I said, the freedom to be what you want and say what you want in music is going to always be there. In film, however, is because everything is, you have to be politically correct on everything now. And on top of that, like, you can't, like, there's, you know, we've literally, society now, sorry to say it, we've fucked ourselves, like literally have fucked ourselves when it comes to being able to, or having the freedom to express yourself, you know, from a sexual standpoint. You know, it's like now, like you with most males, like when you look at it now, because of the movements that have actually been pushed, it's like, yo, you might as well just carry on a clipboard and a document, like an application, and just interview your partner just to find out is, you know, how many relationships have you had in the past? How many successful relationships have you had in the past? What are your likes, dislikes? And if I touch you this way, will you, you know, this, that, and the third? Like, literally, because you have to cross those, like those, cross those or check off those boxes now, not to just be looked at as a misogynistic or, or an individual who's, really out there to objectify a woman as a male, like literally, like you can't, there's certain things and lines that you cannot cross now, especially when it comes to sexuality, without being looked at as this, person who, wants to really, or look down on a female instead of celebrating her, celebrating sexuality right now is just next to nil. It's gone.
Yeah, but you know
what
what
I mean?
You know what's tough? I mean, I'll admit something in my own life that I don't necessarily. I have a problem, and my problem is in my own personal life is that the more I get to know somebody, like my partner, it's harder for me to, like, I think, and I say this, when you have a sexual relationship, when you have lust, it's great. There's an objectification that happens, as well it should, because great sex, you are, but when somebody becomes your best friend, it's hard to then turn around and go, I want to bury my face between your legs. It becomes a weird thing. You're like thinking to yourself, well, but I don't want you to think that's all I think about you, because I adore you and I think you're so talented and wonderful and all that. But really, I just want to see you prone down with your ass in the air in the bed to let me do whatever you will let me do. That's a dichotomy. It's a dichotomy, and it's something for me in my life that I'm like, I fall in love with people, and then it's like, and they want to have that kind of great relationship, but then when you're like, but I feel that reducing someone to a sexual object, and they're like, no, reduce me to a sexual object, as long as. Please do that, and
they
that
want you to, but the fear, it's just the fear.
It's a very weird.
It's a line that you cannot cross anymore. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, and the thing is, it's like, look, I'm one, and Toya tell you, like, I'm one to never objectify a female. I celebrate beauty. I celebrate the simple fact that there are some really incredibly strong females out there, as it should be. But I just think that, like, literally, like. Again, I bring up the films of the 80s, like they taught us how to fall in love. They taught us basically how to love and celebrate the human form.
But let me ask you a question. So clearly you and LaToya are madly in love. And yet some of the pictures that you post, the two of you, are very beautiful photographs. I mean, and you can see the love, and it's like, I mean, Lael, I hope I can say this without you getting offended, but you're a very handsome man. Well, I mean, you're a very good-looking guy, and you're very photogenic. So, like, when I look at you, I'm like, that man could be on Mount Olympus. But so when there was that picture of you and LaToya, when you're facing each other, I'm like, that is, to me, I'm like, that's love, man. That's what I want to see. That's a celebration of the love that can exist. And I look at that, and I don't objectify you guys, but I'm like, there was that one picture you posted of the two of you recently. I'm like, I would blow that up, frame it, and put it on my wall.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't know you guys, I would still do it, because I'm like, these are beautiful human beings that the way they look inspires me, because you can see the love between you guys in that photo, and the look, but you knew that's why you posted it, and you're like, okay, and you probably, it's amazing that exists. And so I look at that and I think, that's inspiring. I love seeing something like that show up on my Facebook feed, and you go, okay, here are people that are truly in love with one another, and it's conveyed through a single image. How many people can do that? Not many.
But there should be. That's the thing. Is not when we talk about it, it's like not many, but like it's like, why is there fear of that nowadays? Like that's
dude. We can't even admit. if you admit you lust after your own girlfriend, people will be like, "Oh, you're just an objectifying man."
Mario Lopez says, but even Baywatch had guys for the female gaze too. And
Yeah,
Joshua
but you know what?
Gonzalez says, sorry, very few men now are having sex at all. They can't compete with people on the internet that are better looking than them.
Okay, here let me ask you this. Here's where we have to ask you. All right, everything is surface oriented. It's all about beauty. Now, I would posit this to you. When you're ever in a position where you go out with somebody and you actually end up in a position where you can be intimate with someone, whether it's a kiss, a touch, or more, are you thinking about like a guy that looks like somebody on TV?
No, I'm thinking about the person who's right in front of me.
Right in front of you. And yet our culture has created a talk about performance anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays we all think that we need to look like we were on Baywatch. And if we don't look that way, then no one desires us. And I maintain that we are all just looking for somebody to touch us the way we want to be touched, or touch us at all. And what we don't even understand, especially, the youth of America. I mean, my God, whether you're on Instagram or OnlyFans or whatever, people forget, they don't even know what it's like to have a person just look into your eyes and stroke your cheek. And what that can mean. Nobody even understands that because we're not shown that.
No, we're not. I mean, we can't even, honestly, even shaking hands is difficult now with everything that's going on. Silver Kino Gary says he was listening to a recent podcast with Tommy Lee, and Tommy Lee said there is no way Motley Crue could have done what they did back in the day if there were cell phones and social media.
Oh,
true.
I couldn't have had half the fun I had. There's no way, because the part of what humanity, I mean, I hate to say it, but we're explorers. You have to be able to explore your own desires, and when you find somebody who's willing to explore with you, you need to know it's safe. Nowadays, it is not safe.
Not safe.
You know, and here's the thing. Phones have exposed horrible injustices, but they've also made exploration terrifying because people. Well, I mean, can you imagine if you are a part of the LGBTQ community and you're just trying to come out and figure out what the hell you're doing, and you have an opportunity to explore that with someone nowadays, like 20 years ago, who cares? Now, you're terrified. You are terrified. If you haven't told your parents, you live in a world where anybody could rat you out,
expose you,
and put a picture on the internet, and you are fucked. And I can't even imagine what that's like. I can't even begin to understand.
Well, I have another question for you both, and it has to do with this new TV series that's coming up for Lord of the Rings. And the question really is, about the way that they're going to depict sexuality in the series. So, while I do want to see more sex and intimacy in a story, should there be any sex and sexuality depictions in a Lord of the Rings spinoff at all, and why or why not? What do you think?
I think it would be odd, like, you know why? Because that line has never been crossed in these films, period. So to see something like that explored in the series would be sort of odd. It's just like, basically, if you watch The Witcher, like if we say for instance, you watch The Witcher now, and all of a sudden they wanted to make a film, and the film was PG rated, and you didn't see sexuality at all, you would be like, wow, that's weird. Like, so it's sort of like, with Lord of the Rings, it's a line that's never been crossed. So to have that on a television series or a streaming series, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie, it would probably come across odd to me because we've never seen it before in that realm, like in that genre. So I don't know.
Robert?
I'm with you 100%. I mean, here's the thing. The way the Lord of the Rings was presented, it's certainly not in the books. It's alluded to. Everything has to come from J.R.R. Tolkien. If you're not honoring Tolkien's original ideas, I mean, I have to say, depictions of sexuality do not. I'll flat out say it. And I am a purveyor of smut. I am a guy that believes in exploitation cinema. I want sex and violence and transgressiveness. But that said, I don't want certain storytelling tropes or environments to be breached. The Lord of the Rings is not about sexuality. And I would say this. If you're going to have any depictions of sex, it will seem so out of place.
Yeah.
And I don't think, like, here's the thing. Game of Thrones, it's fine. But to sit there and go, well, we're good. They've spent. The Lord of the Rings TV series is the most expensive show ever made, not by a little bit. But by
$400 million.
An insane, they spent $250 million on the rights. It is the most insane shit ever. And here's the thing. If they start making that show full of, look, Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings, the second age where this story is set. There is no dialogue. Everyone's adapting it based on dictionary definitions, or there is no characters that you can define. It's all made up. Now, it's based on things like the Silmarillion and other things, but it's not, there is nothing. Tolkien did not write lines of dialogue for anyone who lived in the Second Age. Yes, Sauron was more of a human character and all that. It's great. It's all a construct. It's all a construct. And when I see Jeff Bezos hanging on the picture of the title, I'm like, bro, dude, you know what? Why don't you wait till it's good first? Like, and I'm like, this is perhaps the fantasy tome of the 20th century. Lord of the Rings was one of the most influential books of the 20th century in terms of imagination.
Yeah.
And one of the others I would argue no one's ever heard of now, which freaks me out, which is Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land, which Tom Hanks apparently had the rights to at one point. I can't believe, it's so weird to me. So when I was growing up in Seattle, you go downtown where I buy my comics, and there were head shops or whatever, and there was buttons. Like I had a jean jacket with political buttons, like so many people did, and one of my favorite buttons was I grok, Grok, I grok Spock, and Star Trek button, and Stranger in a Strange Land, and everyone knew what that meant. We're talking 84, 83, 84. If you were to ask anyone what the word grok, 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 what it means, most people would be like, wait, what? And what's funny is grok is a term that came from Robert Heinlein's novel Stranger in a Strange Land, about a man from Mars who comes to Earth. And basically the idea of grok is that you holistically understand a concept from every angle. You truly get it. So you grok it. To grok something is to understand it from all different angles. Well, when I was a kid, I read Stranger in a Strange Land. It was a big deal. Like, you couldn't be a science fiction fan in 1980 and not read Heinlein. Now, people look at me like I'm fucking nuts. They don't even know who Robert Heinlein is. And
well, the first episode of the Book of Boba Fett used it in as one of their titles.
I know.
In the first
episode. I know. And I saw that and I'm like, no one watching this show even understands what that is.
Yeah.
And for me, what's been interesting to be a fan, I was telling I've been applying for a job, and it's so funny. Half the shit that I have to like temper what I write and stuff, and I'm like, they wouldn't even understand what I'm saying. They want this job wants me. But I can't tell them what I know because the people that are looking at my application will be like, we don't even know what he's saying. It's such a weird place to be now. But the idea of I grew up in a world where I thought people would just understand shit.
Yeah.
But then as the decades go by, you realize if science fiction fans don't understand science fiction after a couple of years, how are we supposed to expect our politicians or our and we are losing the plot. By the way, the rest of the world is not.
Well, Robert, first of all, we are all goof people. And,
we are all goof people. Thank you, Tom.
Apple TV recently remade the Foundation series, and as far as I'm concerned,
well, they made it for the first time. No one had ever made it before.
Yes. As far as I'm concerned, it's not quite the Foundation story that I'm familiar with, but they spent if you watch it, of course I watched it, because it's Foundation, and you can see they spent a lot of money on the series, like a lot of money. And, I think that their concept is that, at least from what I'm imagining what's happened in the writer's room when they're coming up with these series is, well, as long as we have the money to throw into the series, that's a science fiction series, or a fantasy series, and we can get all of the look of it right, make it look like it's the series, but the story we can experiment with, and it'll still be in their mind that particular IP. And, it's not the first time this has happened in history. There's a ton of adaptations of books and stories where they're change the ending or, change it around. I personally think that, the Foundation series was okay, but even with the story they created, it wasn't exactly, like a grabbing story to me. It didn't make me want to check out season 2 like The Expanse did. And The Expanse, I don't know how much they spent on The Expanse, but, whether they spent, $100 million or whatever, it didn't matter. The story was so good, in those first few seasons that you were hooked on The Expanse. So you were going to show up and watch it, even if they had 100 episodes in the ship that looked like a recycled version of a ship from another series. It didn't matter. The story was so good. So, I think what I'm fearing about Lord of the Rings, in addition to the nudity and the sexual nature of it, is the idea that they may mess with the prequel of a story that I don't believe is written down anywhere, but they're saying that they're going to take these characters and create a legacy for the character to go into sort of perpetuity. And I'm thinking to myself, create a legacy? Don't you already know what the history might be of some of these characters? I mean, the idea that they may take an evil character or a character we know as being an evil individual and changing his attitude and direction is disturbing. But we're kind of seeing a little bit of that in the Book of Boba Fett, where we have a character who we thought we were going to be presented in a certain way, and we're getting something very different from him. And for me, I feel like sometimes when they do this, we don't get the whole story of the character, and they leave out certain elements that you would naturally be looking for. For example, in the romance department, Boba Fett doesn't have to have, he doesn't have to be sort of like have hundreds of women around him all the time. But, even though he's created this relationship with Fennec Shand where he's saying, I've got your back and, we're going to work together, I still feel like he needs to have another connection that, makes him feel somewhat more of like a real human being. And we can, kind of see that development of him as a man, because
Well-
it would just break my heart if he spent his entire life, or at least the way that they're depicting it now, completely devoid of any kind of relationship with anyone, pretty much. This is the first time that they're kind of like saying, well, this is the first time he's had the family, and I'm thinking to myself, well, he must have in his lifetime sometime had some sort of relationship with someone. So I think it's very interesting, these interpretations that we're getting, and how trying to gear a story that may not have originally been in that direction into something that's supposed to be more creative version of it doesn't necessarily always give us the version that I think is the best outcome. What do you think?
Well,
I said a lot there.
No, I would say this. Here's the thing. The Star Wars universe, what was awesome to me when I saw Star Wars and Empire, those movies, for all of their science fiction fantasy, they were very adult. They presented a fantastical world, but it was a world that all adults could identify with. You never thought to yourself, well, this is so dumbed down, because there were things you could understand, even the romance, Princess Leia and Han in Empire, when they're fixing the Falcon and they finally kiss, everyone understood that. These are two very capable people from different sides of the track. They're good at what they do, and they shouldn't be attracted to each other, but they are, and they kiss, and we all got that. We all understood that. The problem with the book of Boba Fett is the mandate is like, make it a kid's show. And this idea is like, Boba Fett is he's the man with no name. They should have been making for a fistful of dollars, where Boba Fett rolls into Mos Espa, he sees these three families, he's like, I'm going to pit all of these motherfuckers against each other and watch them destroy each other, and then when they're done, I will walk in. The problem that I have with I will say all of science fiction storytelling on TV or whatever, is the people writing it are writing it as if sci-fi is all YA fiction or for kids. And it is, the people that made Star Wars were not making a movie for kids. They were making a movie for everyone. Even George Lucas thought he was making a movie for kids. And when Star Wars, when he first put it together, the rough cut didn't work. He had his wife, Marcia, who's an Academy Award-winning editor, and he had Gary Kurtz, and everybody, they made a film that became a fairy tale for everyone. George Lucas hated Empire Strikes Back. If you read Renzo's book, he hated it because George wants to go in the edit room and tweak and whatever. He hired his film school teacher, Irvin Kershner, to make Empire. And he had such a strength of vision. He shot a lot of it in master shots and all this. Empire Strikes Back, my theory is that Star Wars is great. That could have been the end of it. The entire Star Wars universe, as we know it, is defined by Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars is a one-off thing. Empire defined the universe. Jedi compromised the universe that Empire set up. And we are, to this day, we have Max Rebo and the Rebo Band playing and watching his nose going rah, 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 as he's going doo, 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 doo.
But I love Max Rebo.
Everyone loves Max Rebo, but you know what? The Star Wars universe was destroyed by Return of the Jedi. And I've told people this, people don't get it. The most disappointing movie I've ever seen in my life was the Return of the Jedi. I saw Empire Strikes Back 26 times in the theater. I saw it in the UA 150 on 6th and Blanchard. I sat in the same seat every time I saw it. I spent the entire summer of 1980 getting people to go see Empire with me every Saturday. I was obsessed. I was like, this is unfucking believable. Everything about Empire blew me away. Everything about it. It was such a triumph of fantasy and intellect and amazing. And then I saw Return of the Jedi, and I'm like, what is this, a Saturday morning cartoon? I mean, there's no meaning here. There is no... I hated it so much. You know that... Here's how I would say this to people. Try this experiment. Pick a day, watch, and if you can, get the despecialized versions, because watch Star Wars and Empire and Jedi and listen to the Imperial officers' voices. When you get to Jedi and you hear the voices of the Imperial officers, they don't sound right. They're not menacing. They sound like people cosplaying the Imperial officers from Star Wars and Empire. Don't take my word for it. Just listen to the voices. When that Tidarium shuttle or whatever, I forget the class, comes in at the beginning of Jedi.
Shuttle Tidarium?
Well, yeah, but that's the Tidarium's on Han.
That's the Han. That's the one in Han. Them.
Yeah, what is the class of that? I forget the class of that.
It's.
But if you listen to the voices, you'll be like, oh, I get it. Rob's not wrong. And I'll tell you what I really hated. People forget this. I hated this. The Emperor is introduced in Empire. And the Emperor was, the way they did it, very different than what we know now. Most people don't even know that the Emperor was not Ian McDiarmid. It was a Clive Revel. And when you saw Empire, when Vader's like, if he could be turned, he would be a valuable asset. And the Emperor's like, yes. He's contemplative. Now, after Jedi, when Jedi was introduced and Ian McDiarmid comes down the ramp, he's fucking the witch from Snow White. He even looks like the witch from Snow White. When you saw the Emperor was such a badass in Empire that Vader had to move the Super Star Destroyer outside the asteroid field just to talk to him. And Vader kneels, and the Emperor in Empire, in the original version of Empire, was scary as fuck. He was so scary because he was like, yes. And yet, when Ian McDiarmid became the Emperor, he speaks like the witch from Snow White. That was my Italian version of it. And it's like, Ian McDiarmid, you want this. I mean, it was so over the top. It was so, I'm like, I wasn't scared of the Emperor anymore in Jedi. But the Emperor and Empire, the original Emperor, and by the way, as I'm choking on the nuts I'm eating, I can show you this because I have the despecialized versions on my computer.
Oh, wow.
So hang on as I'm choking on the nuts. Talk amongst yourselves.
You know what? That could be misconstrued.
Yes.
You were right there with me.
Yes.
I'm just saying, I'm like choking on my nuts. Oh, wait.
I just watched a film that had something like that in it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I meant choking on the literal pistachios I've been eating.
Oh, pistachio nuts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on now.
Yeah, that's funny. That was funny.
I didn't even see that. You guys are way ahead of me. I'm like, oh my God. I'm choking on the nuts.
Well, that film really did have something in it that where it was a very unusual scene of a man kind of doing that on himself.
Wait, what?
So,
What are we talking about? Hang on.
The film that we were talking about tonight.
Oh, yes. Yes,
There's
indeed.
a scene where this man very cleverly kind of does something, and he's actually giving himself fellatio.
It is true.
And he ejaculates in his own mouth. There, I said it.
Oh, my God. Wow.
There's a film?
Yes. And someone's watching him like from a distance doing it.
It's true.
Wow.
And he's filming himself at the same time. That's everything. I have nothing else to add.
Wait, you know what's funny? I got to figure out how I can actually play this, and I'll get...
Well, can you? I mean, wouldn't you have to take the sound off, Robert?
I don't know. Do I?
They
I
will
don't
pull
know.
down the video. Yeah, they'll pull down your video.
Oh, I don't care. This has already been... I mean, what I want to do... Oh, you know what? Hang on.
Yeah.
What I want to do is I want to show, because theoretically, they might not have this actual sound on YouTube because it's not part of the movie. Let me see. Maybe I can.
I see what you're saying.
Right. Yeah.
It had so many cuts and revisions and updates, and
it's true.
You know.
My God. In a world where so I have to figure out. So if I'm going to do screen capture, maybe I'll do it because I'll play it if I can do it and add. I never know because I have to add sound, but I have it like called up, so we'll see.
Well, for me, the best thing about Return of the Jedi was just seeing Luke more grown up and kind of like a man now, you know. And I'm like, he's ready. Yes, you know, he wasn't as naive and you know, I'd say I probably shouldn't use the word innocent because I don't think he could be innocent at that point. But after the shock that he got in Empire, you know, he's just not the same person anymore. So
no, it's true. It's true. So wait, you know what's funny? So check this out. Oh my God, how did my dog get outside?
I can hear your dogs. I don't know what.
That is Tallulah, and I'm curious. Let me ask you this. Hang on a second. Let me just. Let me ask. So can you see this? Well, you can't. Let me put this on here. Let me look at this. Let me show you this. Can anyone hear this? You can't hear that. Okay. Let's see if I can make you guys hear it now. Yeah, this is The Empire Strikes Back, but this is the original
The original rendition,
1980 version. So hang on, I have to figure that out. So let me see, edit shot. How can I get sound on here? I don't know. Oh wait, capture system audio. Let's see. Let's try this again. Let's see if I can do this. If I can make this happen. Okay, can you hear this now? No, I can't hear it yet either. All right, well, hang on. Let me just, you guys talk, and we'll figure this out because I want to show this.
I can't remember what the lines are here, or else I would just say the lines.
What is that bidding, my master? I know. I got to figure out how can I. We'll figure it out.
Find Luke or whatever. Find the rebels.
Yeah. I will figure this out. I will figure it all out. And
You have your volume turned up and everything?
yeah, it's just a question of how do you get. See, because with this software, it's like screen capture. So okay, I'm capturing the screen. I can see the picture, but how do you get the audio? That's the
What is thy bidding, thy master?
Yeah, I know. That's exactly what he said. It's true. Yeah.
So I did remember it.
Yeah, you know,
Or
you did.
said it and then you refreshed my memory.
It's true. Well, you know what? I even if I can, I do want to be able to play the sound though. I just don't know how to do it. I don't know, but I could show this. But you know, it's interesting. Even if so look at the depiction, the way it's shot. They've completely changed it now. So even if I'll just repeat what people say, because maybe that's why I won't get demonetized because you can't hear it. But for those of you who have never seen the original version of Empire Strikes Back, this is interesting because this is Clive Revel, or it's his voice, and it's a woman with makeup playing the Emperor. But I think this version of the Emperor is very interesting. So here we go. This is from the original version of Empire Strikes Back. I want every ship available to... So here we go. The Emperor's... he wants to make contact. So they go out of the asteroid field. So here we go. So Vader goes, and normally you would see Ian McDiarmid now. Now look at this version of the Emperor. What is thy bidding, my master? There is a great disturbance in the Force. I have felt it. We have a new enemy, Luke Skywalker. He is just a boy. He's just a boy. Obi-Wan can no longer help him. The Force is strong with him. The son of Skywalker must not become a Jedi. If he could be turned, he would become a powerful ally. Yes. He'd be a great asset. Can it be done? He will join us or die. That's it, man. That's it. That is it. And I'm like, he will join us or die. And you know what? The thing about that, you can't hear it, but his voice is like, can it be done? He's very quiet. He's very contemplative. He's not like, the witch, you're the son of Skywalker must not become a Jedi. Like, dude, the Emperor doesn't have to talk that way. He's like, the son of Skywalker must not become a Jedi.
Philosopher King says the makeup is laughingly bad.
What makeup? It's a hologram.
Oh, on Palps.
I know, but it's a hologram, so it just looks bad. Like, when you send somebody an Instagram.
But it is a prosthesis, isn't it? It's not an actual person's.
It is, but what?
It's prosthetics.
I'm just trying to be like kind of funny, but yeah, the makeup is not the best. But remember, that was 1980, and they're trying to figure out how to make a hologram work and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was just terrified anyway because I was just a kid. I was just like scared. Yeah. So I didn't. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's the evil person. This is for me. So I don't know. Yeah. I was scared, Robert and Leia. I was scared. I'm still a little scared of it, honestly.
But as well, you should be. Listen, I don't know why my dogs are outside at 2:23 in the morning.
Maybe you ought to go and check on them really quick.
I'm going to go check. So you kids, once again, I'm leaving you to your own devices. Hopefully.
Yes. We'll be here. We'll be here. We'll be here when you come back.
We'll be here. Yeah, I mean, I you know what, the I've always felt like, you know what I mean, and I've been blessed to basically have the original as well, like just the original version of Empire, unedited. I have the original version of Star Wars, before New Hope, unedited, you know what I mean? And I put it this way, I love what Jedi represented. It was the climactic ending to a saga, and what it gave us, to me was, after everything that they had been through with New Hope, after everything that they had been through with Empire, it gave us the the closure. The thing is, those films were so cohesively connected. You know, say what you will or say what anybody will, they were so cohesively connected. And I think that, you know, my only gripe about, you know, Jedi number one was how the treatment of course, Boba, like it was just a throwaway character after what we got from him in Empire and how menacing he was. To get that you know, throwaway, like as if he meant absolutely nothing to the trilogy itself, was just like, come on, man. You know, it speaks volumes of how, you know, their thoughts of that character in that film. You know what I mean? I thought that, you know, he should have lasted at least to, like, you know, we should have actually seen him, you know, you know, even, you know, still chasing Han to this day or whatever. But I mean, I guess, like I said, it had a satisfying ending because there was nowhere for that character to go after he'd already satisfied his bounty. The bounty was satisfied at that point. Why he was still hanging out with Jabba and not really going on to, you know what I mean, I don't know. But anyway, but it still served its purpose. You know what I mean? So that's why I don't really think harshly of the film at all. When I rate it, you know, I still have it, you know, as far as, you know, Star Wars cinema, like in films, it's still on my top 5 list, you know, of Star Wars films. But yeah, I don't know. Like I guess, you know, E. McDermott's interpretation of that character is going to constantly be, you know, that's when people think of the Emperor, they're going to think of Ian McDermott and his interpretation of the character, because that's what we basically got, you know what I mean, for so many years. But you know, I do understand what Rob is saying, though, you know what I mean, when it comes to, like, you know, how, you know, you know, noticeably different the feel and the theme of the films were. But I think it had to be that way in a sense, you know what I mean? Like we had to see, like, the differences between both, because it was a balance, you know. The Empire Strikes Back, the Empire, you know, was the centerpiece of that film, you know, of the dark value of the film, because Empire was extremely dark, whereas Return of the Jedi, which was originally supposed to be Revenge of the Jedi, but Return of the Jedi, you know, was that hope factor, like where it gave us that brighter tone, like, you know, that good conquers all type of situation. But it came at great loss at the same time. We lost Yoda, you know, Vader proved that he was a chosen one by sacrificing himself. Anakin sacrificed himself, not just, you know, for his, you know, for his son, but for the galaxy itself, knowing that, you know, what he felt, you know, there was, you know, always things that were wrong about what was happening, you know, and he got his redemptive story. So I think it was like, you know, a lot of it, you know, there, you know, Jedi definitely has his place amongst the sequel trilogy, where you know, when it comes to the sequel trilogy, I again, you know, we can go on and on about that, but, you know, Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, you know, is always going to be ranked high for me. So I don't know. I mean,
Well, for me, Return of the Jedi is always going to be my favorite film because it's the first Star Wars film that I saw in a movie theater.
yeah.
And I was just a kid, and my mother let my cousin and I walk to the movies. You remember those days, Leo?
Yeah.
My mom let us walk to the movies,
yeah.
you know, to see a film. And it was like a big deal for us because we'd never
Yeah.
really done that before. Remember, there's like, yes, you can walk. You can see the early show.
Yeah.
And we, you know, like it was like a 12 o'clock show of it. But what was so great about it was just having that independence and what it stood for us. You know, like we're kids, we're going to the movies by ourselves for the first time, and it was great. So having that experience, especially for it being Return of the Jedi, was a big deal for me. So I'm always going to have a special place for that film, no matter what, just from that experience.
You youngins.
Yeah.
What happened, Robert? What happened
there's
to
a
Doug?
there's a huge windstorm here in California, and one of the doors was completely blown open. And normally the dogs are asleep, and they sleep with us in our bedroom and stuff. The door was open, and I was like, "What is Tallulah outside barking?" She was outside. It's a mess. the wind, and I'm like, oh my God. So I had to put her inside, and Elizabeth's like, what's happening? So I'm like, babe, it's okay. Because she sleeps with earplugs, so she doesn't hear anything. I'm like, the dogs were outside barking. We have neighbors that are not fond of one of our dogs. And one of our dogs, Tallulah, we got her from an Amish farm in Pennsylvania. And she lived in a barn for the first 3 or 4 months of her life.
Lancaster, PA? I wonder if it was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania?
Yes, it was an Amish. Yes. And so she, I think the first part of her life, she lived in a barn, and no one was attending her. So she had to bark as loud and shrill as she could to have anyone pay any attention to her. And she's the sweetest dog, but she barks like black canaries, sonic twee. Like it is the loudest shrill bark. I mean, she barked at me yesterday right in my ear, and I was stunned. I because she's used to that. I haven't figured out, like Gilbert would be like, he walks up, he's hungry, he's like, woof, like really quiet. He's just like, hey, he's like, woof, and I'm like, oh, I get it. Tallulah's, but
so Gilbert's the smooth one out of both.
Gilbert is the smoothest of the smooth, man. He's the Barry White of doodles, man. I mean, he's a 70-pound, 25% Bernese Mountain Dog and 75% poodle, and he is just like, he knows, man. He's like, he loves Tallulah, but he's like, you can see he's like, why you gotta be so loud? Like, why can't you just, like, she only has one volume.
Just chill out.
And Gilbert's like, watch this. He'll walk up to me and he'll be like, woof. And then I know, I'm like, oh. So, I open the door for you. He's like, woof. And I'm like, okay. And then I open it up. And Tallulah's like, and she doesn't understand. And the funny thing is, she just loves me. So she just wants me to sit down or lay down on the bed so she can, like, run over. And she has this weird way. She figures out how she's going to situate herself and, like, flop down at one time. I mean, she's a delightful dog, but she's loud as fuck, and I can't deal with it. And she was running around. Our neighbors hate her. And she was literally, you couldn't hear this, but she was running around outside as the wind is roaring, and she's barking. I'm like, they always complain. Like, we started walking them at night because our neighbors were angry. We live in a house, but the apartment building next door hangs out over our backyard. I'm like, come on, man. What'd you think here? But whatever. People just don't like what they don't like. But no, Tallulah was freaking out. And I walked in. There's a gigantic mess in our backyard. There's so many things that are blown all over the place. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
But at least it's not 17 degrees where you live, Robert.
No, it's warm. It's blowing up a storm, and it's Santa Ana wind, so it's desert wind blowing off these.
Here come those Santa Ana winds again.
The sands off Tatooine,
It's freezing here, man.
I am
God, it's so cold
Bobby
out.
Burnett. I am a bounty hunter. So
Babylon Sisters.
Look, I think the hero of the Book of Boba Fett's Jennifer Beals.
Yeah.
Just saying, I want to. You know what? I want to meet that Twi'lek. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yes. And were you not impressed by Fennec Shan's performance, especially in the hangar bay, as she sniped off people one by one with the greatest of ease, flying around, doing all sorts of, stuff, just coordinating the whole thing. I mean, she was just like a pro. And, we expect nothing less from her because we know that she's, one of the most feared assassins out there. I think she definitely has shown just even a fraction of her abilities because she also has the ability of planning and engagement. And we saw that about her too. In fact, the scene where she's in, they have the table with all of the families there, and she's walking around. I was telling Lael, I said, it's like she's an executive in a boardroom, and she's like, let me explain how things are going to happen. And I'm like, yes, like, I just loved seeing that side of her. It was exciting for me. So I like it.
I think she's great, but I think that the whole show, I think that tonally, it's all over the place. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing about this show to me, I don't think there's been a show in the history of TV where everyone wanted to love it. We all wanted to love everything about it. Mm-hmm. And I've never also seen a TV show where we are battling our own opinions and we're still trying to love it. Mm-hmm. No matter what. We're still trying. We're trying real hard, like in Pulp Fiction. I'm trying real hard, Ringo. I mean, we all. Who doesn't want to love the Book of Boba Fett, especially us Hot Toys aficionados who pre-ordered everything that they're putting out from the show, and you're like wanting to love it. And I feel that they've really let him down as a character. After 4 episodes, I feel like. I'm like, I thought the template for Boba Fett, especially, by the way, if you watch, there's a great 20-minute documentary on the history of Boba Fett on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Under the helmet,
yeah.
It's really good. And they talk about how they added the sound of spurs to him and the whole way he was conceived. And I feel that what they've tried to do, and I understand why, they've taken a character that was nebulous, which is his appeal, and they've imposed an architecture, an archetype on him, and they're playing that archetype out. Whether that was appropriate for Boba Fett or not, they're like, okay, we're gonna go in and look at all these Western stereotypes, and we're gonna take this, and they've imposed on him a very stereotypical journey. And by doing that, they've made him dumb. They've made the character of Boba Fett, like when he's holding up a droid going, I am Boba Fett, to a droid. Yeah. Like, it's like, I get it. I'm like, what am I, 8? I'm like, dude.
That was the scene that really, really burnt. It made me cringe because I felt as though it wasn't needed. Like, you're making him, fumbling around the kitchen, swatting after this thing, made him look like a bumbling idiot, the entire time. And it's like, after you've already given us, listen, I wanted this episode for Fennec, and I'm so glad that we got that episode of Fennec. We got a chance to see the meeting between the both of them. We got a chance to basically see just how skilled and smart and intelligent she is. But in doing so, it's just like, I wonder if the writers and the director really hates Boba Fett. That's just the way I'm seeing it. I'm questioning, do they really hate this character? Because it's it's polar opposite of what we actually got. And it's you entrusted this in the hands in somewhat of Robert Rodriguez to kind of steer this ship. Do they really what the hell? It's not giving me. And the thing is, I know that we sometimes have a tendency to set unreasonable expectations. I understand that, and we want what we want when it comes to a character based on what we've seen. But it's what they've laid out. They laid this out in the episode of Mandalorian, believing that, or having us believe that, okay, cool, this is what we're going to see going forward from Boba. You know what I mean? And it's like, after that, I should have, and it's like, you know what, when we think about it, it's like we can almost say, you know what, we should have known. And the reason why I say that is because even after that episode that we saw in Mandalorian, he was hushed going forward, literally hushed going forward. And the reason why I say that is because not the final episode. No, I believe it was the final episode of the season when they went back and they basically met Bo-Katan and Cosca Reeves in the parlor, and how the treatment of Boba even at that particular point was just like, wait a minute, what? Like, like there's zero respect for this man. So it's just like, yo, come on. Like, I should have known that one scene would dictate what was to come going forward in his own series. And I missed that, but I'm thinking about it now. Like, I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, you know what? I saw this coming a mile away, and I just kind of just wanted to act like it was not there. It wasn't something to be recognized. But this is exactly what we're getting in the series. Like, they're making him a clueless character when he's supposed to be the most feared in the galaxy, and we're not seeing that shit. Well, that's what burns me up.
What I find so strange is that the original creator of Star Wars, George Lucas, always looked to Kurosawa's films for inspiration. I mean, we all know that even the wipes in Star Wars are taken right out of the Hidden Fortress. And to me, okay, if you're looking to samurai, look to Yojimbo, the movie Yojimbo. Toshiro Mifune, I have a Yojimbo action figure right over here. And the thing about Yojimbo, which they remade as Fistful of Dollars, you know, a samurai badass rolls in and sees, okay, there's these two warring families on literally opposite ends of the street as they are in a Fistful of Dollars. And our character rolls in and pits them against each other and then creates a scenario and then benefits from the spoils of war because he's that much of a badass. And I feel that even when Boba Fett gets up out of the Sarlacc pit and the first thing that happens is the Jawas take his armor, I'm like, so, I mean, pardon my phrase if I can't use this, but he's like a bitch. He's like, Jawas don't take Boba Fett's armor.
Yeah.
Have we ever seen Jawas? This was a question that I spoken to Lael about, and you know, we've kind of talked about when the Jawa headbutts Boba. I've never seen the Jawas do anything like that before, and it's not that they don't. I just
like you never see them be that aggressive. If anything,
No.
they're going to actually stun you. But that's what I'm saying. Like literally, yo, in what universe does Boba Fett get jacked? Like literally, he got jacked.
Right.
Like where does that actually happen? Like literally, like they treated him like he was a bag of shit. Like, and that's what's going on through this entire season. Like this show is literally, somebody actually said it in the chat, and I agree. They are neutering him. Like literally, they have neutered this character. Like they have taken him down to the lowest fucking form, and it makes absolutely no sense. It is discrediting to us. It's like, yo, you just don't give a fuck about us as viewers when we've actually seen what this character could do.
Have you seen the trailer for Star Trek Picard Season 2?
Nah.
I have not.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay. But so here's what I would ask you both.
Yes.
I would think that anyone who has a cursory understanding of the Star Wars franchise over the last, let's face it, 45 years. You know, May 25th, 2022 is the 45th anniversary of Star Wars. So anyone who has a cursory understanding of Star Wars, why is it that this is what they've chosen to give us? Like, I would think that it's self-evident. Jon Favreau's a smart guy. Dave Filoni's a smart guy. Why is it they're trying to impose? I mean, and why would Disney? I get it. It's Disney. But Boba Fett in Empire Strikes Back, I don't count what happened. See, here's my problem. Boba Fett was portrayed as a buffoon in Jedi. And that's another reason I fucking hate that movie. I love the end of Jedi. I love the confrontation. But Jedi makes everyone in that... the Return of the Jedi makes every single person incompetent. The only time they're any good is in the opening, and that's only because they get lucky. And I love the opening. I love the swashbuckling opening of the rescue of Han Solo. But in the rest of the movie, all anybody does is fail. And I hate that. I hate it. It's like Skyfall. James Bond fails the entire movie. In Return of the Jedi, our heroes fail. Who blows up the Death Star? Lando Calrissian. That's great. But Han, Luke, and Leia, they get lucky because, well, the Ewoks rescue them. And they're like, whatever. I mean, it's It's a movie, and I feel that the Star Wars franchise now, so much of it is buffoonery, and it is part of our culture now that you can't have an anti-hero. You can't have a character that walks in. Boba Fett should have walked into Mos Espa and been like, oh, I'm going to pit all three of these families against each other and make them destroy each other, and then I'll walk in and take over. But he can't even.
Let me ask you a quick question, Rob. While you're thinking about that, do you think now that we're seeing? I'm gonna pose this to both you and seeing what we've actually seen in the last few years, highs and lows. Do you now think that it was a wise decision to sell the franchise to Disney?
I do, because we wouldn't be getting as much Star Wars content as, we clearly, the funding just wasn't there. You needed billions of dollars to push this stuff through, and private investors were not going to do this. There was no private investor that would have been able to push all of this Star Wars content through. So you needed a huge corporation like Disney to make any of this come to light. We wouldn't have gotten the 3 films. We might have gotten 1 film by now, and we certainly wouldn't have had any TV series or any kind of additional shows or anything like that. So we wouldn't have seen any of this over the past, 10 years? None of it would have existed. We would have had maybe 1 film, and only God knows who would have directed that film. Maybe it would have George Lucas, or maybe he would have handed it off to someone else.
With saying that, though, okay, and that's cool, and that I agree with what you're saying right now wholeheartedly, but now, with saying that, do you think that they have, in a sense, misused the property to the point that they haven't really taken their time to really know what the IP represents? Do you think that they've just now? Okay, what I'm saying is, do you think that it's more so about, okay, like, let's recoup the $4 billion that we've actually spent. Let's just basically focus on that rather than telling a really good story. Do you think that the focus is more on residual gain, or you know what I mean? What do you think?
I want to answer that before Robert because I know Robert has.
I won't say a word. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Robert.
No, don't apologize.
For me, when I look at the sequels, I see an opportunity for them to re-edit the films and to make them really good. And you can do that. And unfortunately, we're not going to get our Luke, Leia, and Han reunion like we wanted. But perhaps with the magic of digital technology, they may make it happen. So there's always a possibility of that happening, and just not the way we would have liked it in the sequels. But I think that the sequels can easily be re-edited. Just take out some very key elements, and if you re-edit those films, you might have something of quality left in them. And I think you could also say that, let's say, for the Book of Boba series that we have now. If you were to go in, re-edit it, kind of make it so that we get certain things at certain times so that it makes sense. After all those adventures that he's had, certainly he would be thinking about some mistakes he's made along the way. It can't all be Tuscan dreams. It just can't be. There has to be some sad things that he's dreaming about. He's a dynamic person with so many experiences and things that he's seen throughout the galaxy that would disturb him. And the motivation for saying that because he doesn't want to be pushed around as a bounty hunter anymore and feels he can make more money on his own is great. It makes sense. But I still feel like he's missing something. And why we feel this way is because we know, we've been told all these years through books, through comics, through his reputation, that there is something about him that makes him feared. We want to be feared. I want to be scared of him. I want to see him do some scary things that will frighten me. And even if it was just 10 or 15 minutes of this in the beginning, and like the first 2 episodes should have dealt with this, and 3 and 4 should have been this cosmic war we get. So like 5, 6, and 7 can be stuff that we can enjoy, setting us up for the next set of Boba stuff that's coming down the pike. Sure, it's speculation. I don't know if they wanted to do that with him, and maybe they have this plan. But honestly, even The Guardian is writing articles about how they're ruining one of the coolest characters out there.
I read that today. That was hilarious.
Yes, The Guardian said very clearly, and this is not my writing, this is the Guardian. There's a precedent for Boba's unlikely resurrection. Plenty of non-canonical novels, which we all know, the comics, which I don't own the comics, but I've been watching the comic dramatizations on YouTube for years, and stories that have depicted his escape from the Sarlacc. But little did we know that this show was bringing him back only to kill him all over again.
Yeah.
And by kill him, I mean systematically take apart everything that ever made him the coolest and most mysterious character in the galaxy. Now, they could go ahead and keep this series the way it is, and then the next series could be like Boba's Tales or the Boba Chronicles. Set us up so that we know, oh, the next season is going to be like where he really has been kicking some ass and some things, some bad shit that went down. But they haven't set us up for anything like that.
None of that.
And so, it feels like we're missing something in it. I'm still sticking to he needs to have some kind of intimate relationship or something that means so much to him that if he doesn't pull this off, like he's going to die or something. This has to mean so much to him right now. This has to be like the most important thing that he's ever done in his entire life. But there has to be a reason why it's the most important thing he's ever done in his life.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel as though right now, after this show ends, they're not going to really care about it anymore.
And
like,
I also
literally.
for everybody who, and I'm sorry, Lael and Robert, for anybody who's listening to this, I'm waiting for someone to re-edit those sequels.
Yeah.
There's got to be somebody out there who's like, I know what I can do. I'm going to change this around. Someone will re-edit them, and then they will make sense.
I've always basically said that there's a such thing, and it was introduced in Rebels. And I think that they should have utilized that. The World Between Worlds should have been utilized where they go back and change everything that happened. Like, literally, it's a device that should have been used.
People have talked about that.
They introduced Finn, and he's a beautiful character. And I want to see Finn have that adventure. I don't care.
He needs to have his just due. Like, literally.
Yes.
Well.
And I'm going to be quiet now.
What's up, Rob? Because I know he's going to go.
Sorry,
No. I'm sorry.
Really
Let me put my smart corn down.
No, but everything that you said, like, literally, is on point. Like, on point. The simple fact that yes, we know what his motive is now, and it's good that we actually got that. We know what he wants to do in his agenda, but everything up until that point, like, we haven't seen him as the aggressor that we've known him to be. Like, you can give us that story. You can actually give us his objective, but show some aggression. Like, they've been telling us entire. It's like, even in the show, they're saying like, yo, you need to be the aggressor for people to fear you and to respect you.
Yes.
They're telling us, like, even in the show, that no one respects this character. It's the sentiments that we all actually feel right now. Like, no one respects you, bro, because we don't. like, we're watching the show and we have zero respect for you as a character. And I don't understand, like, how literally, I'm sorry, and it's just my opinion. I don't and if Favreau wrote this shit, I don't understand how it was greenlit. I really don't. Like, how they didn't sit there and say, yo, wait a minute. Are you sure this is what you want to do with this?
Okay,
come on, man.
I'll tell you how it was greenlit. Here's the thing. First of all, Jon Favreau, everyone likes him. Mm-hmm. You know, he directed Iron Man. Here's the problem with Hollywood. And it's something that's been the problem from the very beginning, but since I began my career 33 years ago, it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. The people that are actually running the studios, like Bob Chapek, who runs Disney now, is a corporate guy. You know, he ran parks, and he worked his way up in the Disney corporate structure. Mm-hmm. Now, from a corporation's point of view, they look at your education, they look at what you've done, and, oh, he worked in this department, this department, this department. Well, when it comes to telling stories, nothing in corporate America could ever define what that is. Oh, do you know what makes a good story? Well, no, I got my MBA at Princeton. Oh, well, Princeton, we'll hire you. But we need somebody to be in charge of stories, and I know you have an economic degree, but you graduated from Princeton. Let's make you to be. We just thank you. We just bought Star Wars for $4 billion. You're from Princeton. Why don't you oversee Star Wars? There's no way in corporate America to define people who understand storytelling. Doesn't exist. There is nothing. The people that get hired are Ivy League educated MBAs, and they're put in charge of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they look at spreadsheets, and they look at things like, this person did this, and this, and this. They can't make the connection. Well, perhaps would this person be the best person to work on this franchise? That is not part of their purview or their understanding. So Disney, who's a gigantic corporation, the people that are in charge, they're like, well, we never understood why Boba Fett was a great character. They don't get it. And for them, what they're doing is they're still consulting pieces of paper from outside marketing organizations or Ivy League educated business people that are running, here's what our analytics tell us. We have to go by this. What's so funny is, like, there's no one at the executive branch of Disney that was a Star Wars fan, that grew up like, I ordered that Boba Fett figure from Kenner, sending in my proof of purchase figures. I would say this. I would be like, if anyone was Kathleen Kennedy, and you know what? I'm a huge Kathleen Kennedy supporter. I am. But you know what? If I went to her and I said, hey, Kathleen, do you remember what it was like to cut out your proof of purchase seals from all those stormtroopers you bought just because you wanted to get that Boba Fett figure? She would look at you like you were out of your fucking mind. And I'm like, Kathleen, this is why perhaps you and Star Wars aren't a good fit. Because you do not understand what drove people to send in those proof of purchase to get that Boba Fett figure. You don't understand what it was like when dumb motherfucking kids from Battlestar Galactica were shooting bullets down their throats, and it made Boba Fett not be able to fire his backpack rocket. She'd look at me. If I was that guy in her office, she would look at me and call security and be like, who is that guy? Who is that guy? And I'm like, I'm the guy that knows a lot more about the franchise you're in charge of than you do. And I'm a fan of hers. And when I watched the Star Trek Picard, the brand new season 2 trailer, I watched the most singular, unoriginal succession of images, and I'm like, how is it that the corporate structure of whatever's going on at CBS Viacom, how is it, Terry Metalis, God bless you. I like 12 Monkeys, sir. I know you work for Brandon Boggett, but I'm like, dude, I have never seen... It was like every single shot I'd be like, oh, that's from Tapestry. That's from All Good Things. That's from... I mean, there was not one shred of originality. I'm like, we already saw Tapestry, dude. We saw that. It was an episode of TNG. And I think that the greatest enemy of storytelling is corporate America. And what's so interesting is the very people corporate America needs to make great stories, their structure won't allow them to hire. Yeah. Because they have to say, well, you know what, shareholders, we just hired this person from Princeton University, and that's all anyone cares about. That person might know nothing about Star Wars, and we're going to put him in charge of the franchise. I mean, we live in a world. Our country is so upside down. We can't even get people that know how to make good Star Trek and Star Wars. And Favreau and Filoni know. But it's just like they were probably given a mandate. I'm sure Jon Favreau was like, well, can't we? No. You need to make Boba Fett sympathetic. So let's give him, let him pin a robot down in a kitchen going, I am Boba Fett. Like, bro, come on. Really? You've wrecked 40 years of merchandising.
Mm-hmm.
I've questioned my Hot Toys orders. Howard Chan's like,
Yeah.
can't you make Boba Fett fucking cool? We've made
Yeah.
so much money, and you turn him into a punk.
Yo, that's the day.
I mean, get Howard Chan to call up Disney and be like, guys, let me tell you why you fucked up. By the way, Howard Chan, it started Hot Toys, and they made a lot of fucking money off Star Wars figures. And Howard Chan's like, I'm Asian, and Boba Fett is an Asian. Everything that Boba Fett comes from is from Asian cinema, whether it's Japanese, Hong Kong, Chinese, or Korean.
Oh,
You
man.
Americans do not get it. Everyone's not
man.
sympathetic. You know what's great about Japanese or Asian characters? Bushido. They will kill motherfuckers who deserve to die. They won't be like,
In one strike.
Wow.
In one strike.
in one strike,
Wow.
they will. My favorite thing in any movie
Yeah.
ever in the history of films is in the end of Shogun Assassin, the dubbed version, when you have the Masters of Death,
Yeah.
and here's one of them, and he's Ogami Aito has defeated him, and he's on the sands, and he's like, I have always dreamed to cut someone in the throat like that, to hear the sound. And then he stops and he goes, but to have it to my own throat is ridiculous. And then his throat opens up, and there's a gigantic geyser, because it's Lone Wolf and Cub, spewing out of his throat onto the sands.
Yeah.
That's what people want from Boba Fett. They want him to be Aito Ogami. By the way, Lone Wolf and Cub, Aito Ogami is pushing his son Daigoro in a James Bond, Austin Martin baby cart assassin, killing motherfuckers, hundreds of people. Boba Fett should be
Yeah.
How do you not? Here's the thing. Favreau and Filoni know. Just like Kathleen Kennedy knew. But they were told by the higher up. They were constrained. Everyone wants to blame, well, Kathleen Kennedy this, Kathleen Kennedy that. She made your childhood. She's a fantastic producer. She was appointed to head Lucasfilm before it was sold to Disney. It's not Kathleen Kennedy's fault. Make no mistake. They think that Star Wars is for kids. It's a kid franchise.
That's
You
what they
can't
believe.
have Boba Fett be like rolling into town killing motherfuckers. You can't do that.
Now, Robert, we have some super chats to get to, as well as
We do. We have a lot. We have a few. Hang on. Here's one. Joshua Gonzalez. I already did that. RRTNZ says, "Hail team, I have to weigh in on the Eternals discussion regarding Sprite. If they only adapted Gaiman's series, they'd have covered that and so much more." I agree with you. They would have, but they didn't. I mean, they went back to Kirby. I would love it if they did. For those of you who don't know, Neil Gaiman, the creator of Sandman, wrote... I can't reach it because the Enterprise is in the way. But he wrote a great Eternals series that dealt with all that. It's really good. So I would recommend you check it out. So you're right. It's true. Stub McShave says, comedian Jim Jeffries put it, in America, it's illegal to pay someone for sex, except if you have your buddy film it and put it on the internet. I know, right? You can monetize everything. And that is the great dichotomy of this country. How do we deal with that? Or not only that, it's illegal to pay someone for sex, but if you film your girlfriend and she has an OnlyFans account, oh man, monetize that shit, son. Vic Rattlehead, it's an N at the end. Wheel of Time was a disappointment recently. Books are so leagues above the Prime Video adaptation. Well, here's the thing, Vic Rattlehead, you sent that in right after Stubble McShave, who is the greatest Wheel of Time fan ever. I would say this. I've only read the first book. It is a wildly ambitious fantasy tale.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought Wheel of Time was actually pretty good. I enjoyed it. Is it the books? No. But it's not bad. They didn't, I mean, it wasn't horrible. I liked it.
And also, they were lucky that it was adapted on Amazon because there were millions and millions of people who saw it, far more than the readers of the book. So I think that it was a good thing that they did it on that.
Agreed.
That streaming service.
This is a good name. Bon Necron 444 sends in a super chat and says, "The only interesting part of Jedi to me was the fight between Darth and Luke." Agreed. That's the whole movie. Mm-hmm. The rest was trash. All downhill after that. Darth Maul was a brief, shining moment. People forget this, but the great line of Darth Maul was not even in the film. It was only in the trailer. "At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have our revenge." Not even in the movie. People don't even remember that. And
it wasn't?
Nope.
I thought it was.
No, it is not.
Remember when he was on the balcony talking to the Emperor?
Nope. Everyone thinks it is because we've all seen the trailer. And you know what? In my mind, check it out. It's the total Mandela effect. He never says anything. Wow, everyone left.
No, I'm here. I'm still here.
Oh, nope.
I'm still here.
That is not in the movie. And everyone thinks it is. And it's like, that is the greatest Darth Maul moment ever. And it only exists, despite the fighting, but his voice, it's great. Not in the movie. And we all think it is.
I love when Luke finally starts to get aggressive with his I mean, of course, he's fighting his father and this, it's a personal conflict, but I like when he starts to get really aggressive when he mentions his sister and he's like, I'm going to, I'm like, yeah, it feels so good. It looks so good to see him.
Yeah, but you know what? That's him succumbing to the dark side.
Hey, Rob.
I know, right?
Hey, Rob. It actually is. I just watched it.
He never says that in the movie unless they added it.
Because I'm watching it right now, and he actually does say it. Like,
come on, where?
Remember when they first introduced not when they first introduced him, but we actually see him on the balcony in Coruscant with the Emperor, and he says it.
What are you watching?
I'm watching the film.
Then they have to have added it. He never says that in the movie. In the original version of Phantom Menace, he never says that line.
Unless they actually did like a cut. Like
they might have, because they've added all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, they probably did.
Oh, wait, what are you watching? Are you watching a YouTube video?
No. I'm actually watching the Phantom Menace. It was funny that you said it because I had it queued up earlier because I need it as background when I'm dealing with clients. So I need to actually have some whatever. And I had it queued up, and on that particular, not the scene, I just fast forwarded to that scene.
Hang on a second.
I remembered it.
What version of the movie are you watching?
What you mean? The Phantom Menace?
You're watching it. Are you watching on YouTube?
No, I'm watching on Disney Plus.
Oh, well, then it could be because in the original version of the movie, that is not in the film. By the way, if I'm wrong, correct me. But yes, Jared Speed says it is added. Winslow Red Cross says it was in it. It wasn't, though. It was in there, Rob. It's people say it's in the movie. What's interesting, I'm curious because I don't think it was. And you know what? I have the Japanese original Laserdisc. I'm curious about that. Because someone says it's added. The DVD release has it too. Yeah, because they added a bunch of shit in the movie. I'm curious.
Yeah, because I remember actually because I remember sitting watching it, and when I originally saw it, I remember looking at the lip service, and I was like, you know what? Ray Park doesn't talk like that. He doesn't sound like that at all. And I knew it. Just hearing it, I was like, yeah, he doesn't sound like that. But that's how I remembered that particular scene in the film. At least, what I saw. So if it was added later, but I do remember it in the film.
Hang on, I'm gonna look this up because hang on. It is well, there's a whole I'm looking at this. Wow, there's a whole thing about this.
Mm-hmm.
These are just all the Darth Maul quotes. Because
Ride or Die says my brother would do Vader's voice and I had to make up Maul's voice.
Well, yes. It's interesting because wow, everyone's like well, it's not Ray Park's voice.
Well, Robert, are there more super
Am
chats?
I wrong? Because I gotta tell you, when I first saw Phantom Menace, I was waiting. That's my favorite line. I love that. At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have our revenge.
Yep. Because I have it paused. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I love it. But when I first
Reddit.
saw the movie,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
You could find out on Reddit which versions have it in which tone.
Oh, really? And what do they say?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm sure it's on Reddit.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it would be, but from what I remember, that was actually, it's in the trailer, but it's not in the actual film unless they add it, which they've added so many things. It's hard to say, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm willing to admit it.
Yeah.
But it's, I wonder if it's, but if it's there in the movie, you have it on Disney Plus. That's got to be the new version. That I can't deny that. I just wonder.
Okay.
Because
this is what I pulled this up earlier because I was like, you know what, this is what I want to see, and we haven't seen anything like this remotely close. This is what I wanted to see. This is what I want to see in the show.
Yes.
This is the 6 scale figure. This is what I want to see, and none of this is being displayed. He's carried around a gun the entire time and hasn't used it once. He's taken off his helmet more than anything, and I'm like, why?
Especially with the mayor's envoy.
Yeah.
That guy shouldn't even have existed past that crazy introduction he did.
Mm-hmm.
He should have never made it out of the palace.
Nah, shouldn't have. There should have been a shot. Like if you come in and you shoot Biv Fortuna, you shoot him like literally, like you don't give him a chance to speak. He's shot like literally, but you let this guy come in with the level of disrespect. Like everybody that came in basically said, "There's zero respect for you here," like literally.
Yeah.
So like, that's what I don't get, because at the end of look, Din Djarin is the Boba Fett that we should have had.
Well, the thing is that the Mandalorian is Boba Fett.
Yeah.
I mean, and no one's saying that.
Both.
No.
We could have had both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We could have had both because, I still think Boba Fett has had many more adventures than the Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, I'm so.
Because the Mandalorian didn't even know what a Jedi was.
Yeah.
But Boba Fett knows it all. He knows it all. There are things he's seen that, the Mandalorian can't even dream up.
Oh, man.
At least that's what I'm telling myself.
I don't know. I'm just highly disappointed. I don't want to be disappointed. And there are some good aspects of the show that I'm taking away some things that are good. But it's just like, with 3 episodes left, how much redemption do you think you can pull off of this character? Because right now you've just we're everybody is so vested in what we're going to see next from other characters than we are from Boba. Now we want to see if we're going to see other bounty hunters. when people heard the music at this last episode at the very end, it's like, okay, well, are we going to get Mando? And even though I don't want them to rely on other characters to kind of make this show successful, I'm like, yo, this show needs to stand on its own 2 feet. And that's the breathing space that they gave Mando. The first season of Mando, they gave him that space to breathe before we got season 2. And they got overly, not overly, because it was just the right amount of fan service that we needed. You know what I mean? And Boba was one of them. But it's just like, yo, this season, literally, like you said, Rob, has made this character look like a punk ass mofo. Like, he doesn't look like the Boba that I know. And it does have me questioning whether or not I want to cancel this order or not. Literally. That's how
cancel your order?
That's tough. That's where I'm at. It has me thinking like, yo, I don't know if I really want this. I have the 2-pack, and that's where my mind exists, because that's the Boba that I want to remember.
Well, and that's the Mandalorian 2-pack. When he shows up, he's a badass. And
because he has the armor is all scruffy. Or
man.
distressed armor, whatever you want to call it.
Like, I'm like, what are we getting now? Like, what's going on? Like, literally, where
Peacemaker Boba.
Well, the real character, the real question is who and what is Boba Fett, and why do people like him? And I feel like so much of this is exactly what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
Is that everybody wants to make characters that are palatable. Mm-hmm. And let's turn Boba Fett into somebody who we all like. Mm-hmm. The fact is, we like Boba Fett because he's somebody we don't like. And the reason he's a bad dude, that's why we like him. He's not nice. And when you show him being sympathetic, let me show you how to ride the speeder bikes, and we'll take care of the train. Like, I understand Boba Fett's an honorable guy when he sees people being murdered and Banthas being murdered. Like, here's the thing. Here's another thing I hate about the show that I really don't like. So you're telling me that in order to make the characters in that train bad, you're going to have them literally randomly shoot animals and people, sand people, and that's horrifying.
It was horrible. It scared me to death.
I mean, they're snipers, so that's okay. You can show that kind of villainy, that kind of murderous, horrible, we're going to randomly shoot beings. That's okay. But it's not okay to make Boba Fett an amoral anti-hero?
Yeah.
But you can kill sand people and banthas? Like, can you imagine, like, the people at Disney said, who doesn't love banthas? And yet, we're going to have somebody just randomly kill them. Like, they did. They actually did. They killed banthas. That's fucking horrific.
Yeah.
And that's okay, but making... And by the way, they killed multiple banthas. They didn't just kill one. They didn't just kill one. They did it in multiple episodes.
Well, maybe we have like a Boba Fett cooking show to look forward to. Maybe that's why he spent so much time in the kitchen.
Probably. That's the way it looks, right? That's the way it looks. The way he was eating that meat did look like.
Don't be surprised if we get a cookbook.
Yeah, right.
Terrible.
Listen. And the thing is, I'm so willing, and I'm trying to give this show a chance. Me
too. The thing, we all want to love it. Like, don't we? I've never watched a show where I want to love it more than ever.
Yeah,
I want Boba to go to the sanctuary, get in bed with Garza Fwip, and I want the Pikes to go and blow up the palace, where Boba's staying. Then he's got to like run out of there, figure out what the hell is going on. That's what I want to see. I want to see some chaos happen.
I just still don't understand when they get my fire spray ship back. I don't understand why he just doesn't leave. Like, I got my ship. Let's go. Why are we staying on this like ridiculous fakakta planet? I don't care. Like, let's leave. Let's go away. Like, I don't give a fuck about any of these people. Like, I understand that Tuscans are dead. I hang out here. It's fine. Why am I on Mos Espa? The last time you saw me, I was hired by, like, there's me and 6 other dudes who are the most fearsome bounty hunters in the galaxy, and now I'm on a desert planet hanging out where I could be at the wherever the First Order is, or I only work for the best people. It's almost like he's Tatooine is supposed to be a truck stop.
Yeah,
it's a shithole, man. And he's like, I'm like, I got my ship back. Time to go. Bye bye. Why is he staying there? I'm out. I'm going away.
You know what? They set. Okay, so when I looked at it, I was like, you know what? There were so many different ways that they could have. They gave us a glimpse of how they could have did this show, like literally, because you clearly see that Boba has a gripe for being left for dead. Like, he was left for dead on the sands of Tatooine. It would have been decent to actually see him in this season with a list of names that he needs to check off, going after these individuals for leaving me behind. And in it, you know what?
Notches on his helmet.
Notches, like basically saying like he's going after individual, and not knowing that these individuals that he's going off or going after are actually threats to a town. He doesn't care about the town. He's taking them out by actually being in, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's just going to assassinate these individuals. People are probably looking at him as, you know, oh, you're the savior. He's just like, no, but I just came to fulfill whatever and then leave. That's it.
But even that, it was like, I mean, Han Solo hit his backpack and he fell into the Sarlacc pit. It's not like he had some grand plan that was disrupted. It was all an accident. Everything was an accident. He flies out. He like, oh, well, apparently I lived and everyone else is dead. It's such a weird thing. He's like, I just want to get my ship and leave. Like, why is he still there?
Yeah.
And the idea that, okay, you know, we flew to the Sarlacc pit and apparently on this show, you can take a Bantha to Mos Eisley or Mos Espa because they're about 20 minutes apart, because that's how long it would take to a Bantha to ride to each place. And I look at this, I'm like, guys, a Bantha? Like, really?
We have more super chats, Robert, or member.
Well, hang on. Darth Plato says, you don't need to read the rest on air if you don't want to. Yes or no? Would it be a good plot twist if Fennec was involved in the Tusken massacre? Oh, you know what? Yes, she's the villain, man. She's the badass. She's going to be revealed as being the inside man, so to speak. And you know what? That'll be just yet another disgrace that Boba Fett has to endure.
Catherine Cook said that as well. She felt that Fennec might have ulterior motives in this whole thing. So,
of course she does. I mean, here's whatever happened to making badass characters. I mean, I grew up watching movies. It didn't matter whether. Remember when Chuck Norris was new? Good guys wear black, and there was that jumping in the trailer, and he kicked in the driver's or the windshield of a car, or the octagon. I mean, whatever happened to characters that just beat up motherfuckers? And where are we at? Like, Darth Plato says,
we got lost in the sauce on that one.
Oh, I already said. All right, no, so we're caught up. Actually,
we are?
Actually, Bon Necron 444 says. Well, I already said that. I already read that. The only interesting.
What about Mikey Lito member chat for 11?
Oh, that's a new one. Yes, that's a new one. That's right there. That's new. I didn't see it. Mikey Lito says, "Would you be happy if Boba Fett turns into Vito Corleone in Chapter 7?" Well, here's the thing. No, because it's too little, too late. I mean, we've watched. I really think they've made Boba Fett a boob. I mean, I hate to say it, but they've made him kind of dumb. And I don't quite get it.
Well, can anything push Boba over the edge? Is he that cool of a customer that nothing bothers him? I mean, I wonder about that.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. The Empire Strikes Back defined Boba Fett. And if you think back, think about what he did. He outthought Han Solo. He knew his tactics to drift away with the rest of the garbage. He knew that the hyperdrive was damaged, because a lot of people don't quite get the time frame of Empire. It wasn't like Luke went to a weekend on Dagobah. He was there for a long time. And it took a long time for the Millennium Falcon to fly to Bespin. It wasn't like hours. It was probably a month. And Boba Fett flew to Bespin, figured that shit out, called the Empire, called Vader. He goes, we're all coming. It's all coming down. It was all set up. It was all done. And Luke, I mean, how long did it take? I mean, the Millennium Falcon did not have hyperdrive. We don't know what. So how long did it take the Falcon? Most people think Empire Strikes Back took place in like 2 days. It really didn't. Luke did not train with Yoda for like an afternoon.
No.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's a month. I don't know if it's 2 months. But I'll tell you one thing. Going from that asteroid field to Bespin without hyperdrive was a long fucking time. It took a long time. And Boba knew. But Boba had a hyperdrive. So the Slave One got to Bespin way before the Falcon did.
Yeah.
But that's not entirely clear in the film. So, I mean, the question is, Boba Fett was very, very capable. He outthought Han Solo. He figured shit out. And then in the show, they just, every time here's what's so funny. Lale, don't we want Boba Fett to be the most awesome motherfucker in the world?
That's all we wanted.
And yet we're now in a position as an audience to make excuses for him. And I don't get why. It's a very simple thing. Boba Fett is an amoral motherfucker. And if you want to give him a code, what he does is he pits other people against each other to further his goals. Just like the Man with No Name. Done. And yet, we're watching a show where the entire series is supposed to humanize and make Boba Fett sympathetic, which is the antithesis of what we love about him. And this is why what Disney is doing doesn't work. Inherently, it doesn't work. The characters, Darth Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin, murdered billions of people. Star Wars is about a political rebellion. Like, if you're going to try and turn it into a fairy tale, be like, oh my God, I want my daughter to cosplay Princess Leia at 3. Yeah, you know what? She stood by and watched her entire race exterminated.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't understand why people won't embrace what these entertainments actually are
about. Yeah.
Why is that so difficult? Don't know. Kids, it is almost for you.
Robert.
It's almost
Yes, ladies.
7:30 in the morning.
6:30.
6:30.
Yes, it is 6:30 in the morning. What a great night we have had, gentlemen.
I think so too. I mean, we went from sex to Star Wars, which is pretty much my life. Usually, I want to go from Star Wars to sex. That's how it began. But sex to Star Wars, it's all good. I want to thank the two of you. So remember, this is going to be the last episode of Midnight Metal. We're going to turn it into Midnight Madness, Midnight Musings. It's going to be changed from something that's supposed to be metal to something that's supposed to be intellectual. And by the way, that's defined by the two of you.
Yes. We can call it at the stroke of midnight.
Oh, I love. Oh man, you had to go there. Wow, I just got all erotic.
Yo, come on.
I'm trying to elevate the discourse, and okay, I'm there for you though. I'm there for you.
Eroticism. Come on,
man. Dude, I'm like.
A new year,
feels good.
a new show.
New year,
new show name.
Yeah, well, you know what? I want to tailor it to something. The two of you have been great. I love streaming with you. We need Midnight Metal was a vestige of last year. It was born out of the Snyder cut of Justice League, and it's all good. But you know what? I think now we're going on an intellectual journey of action figures and action movies. So we'll come up with a name.
Yeah, we will. We will.
Don't think next Friday we'll be here. The 75th anniversary or episode of Midnight Metal will transmute. It will change. It will be like the Sankara stones illuminated, and we liberated the kids and the minds. It'll be fantastic.
And will the time change, Robert, slightly? Will the time be
okay? I will work on that. I mean, here's the thing. The only reason Midnight Metal is so my life is I have to walk my dogs at 10:30, but I could do it earlier, change it up. Things are changing, so why not? I mean, wouldn't it be better if we started 2 hours earlier?
It would be better.
All right then. And I love streaming with you both. It's great.
Yes.
And a fun show. You never know. And it was good. Tonight was fun. I think I want to thank again everyone for participating. People that support the channel via super chats and tips, thank you so much. I want to thank members of this channel, like Mikey Lido, thank you so much. And I most especially want to thank Lael Rockwell. Lael,
yes,
you just passed 2,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Yes.
Where can people find you? Because, by the way, your content is aces, sir.
Oh, man, thank you. They can find me at the 1/6 Scale Man YouTube channel. On Instagram also, and on Twitter as well. It's been great. It's been a great journey, man. I couldn't have done it without you guys, definitely. So always give credit where credit is due. You can find me there on actually this Sunday as well for Take Your Position.
What figure are you gonna do on Sunday?
So this Sunday we decided we're gonna actually pose up an Infinity War Thor and also Endgame Thor. So actually any Thor that you actually have, we're gonna actually pose up that IP and also companion pieces to that figure as well. So you might see Hela, you're gonna see Heimdall, you're gonna see so many different figures that we're gonna actually pose up with that. You can see Loki, whoever. So that's going to be on the show on Sunday. So that's going to be interesting. It's going to be some fun. We got a new intro for the show, so I'm happy to unveil that one. So it's going to be incredible. Also Mondays you can actually find us for Comic Book Talk with Friends, where we discuss any and everything comics. So I'm so excited about that show. It is picking up, and I've just enjoyed it so far with everybody that's been on, myself, Brendan, Jedi Kid, and Vinny. It's been so much fun.
Well, you're killing it, man. You elevate the discourse, and I'm proud to stream with you, but you've been doing a great job on your channel.
Bro, it's been fun, man. It's like, this is why we do it. Like, we do it to kind of connect with individuals and put that energy out there, the positive energy, as much as we actually can do. Rob, next week, when you have time, whichever time you have, we want to do that Star Trek.
Dude, anytime after like 3 or 4 is fine.
Cool. So we'll basically actually set that up. We're going to tee that up next week. So I'm excited about that. Figure Talk,
I can't wait.
Yeah, so Say What is going to be on Wednesday, as we always talk about figures and collecting and stuff like that. Keep in mind, we have just now entered Chinese New Year, so there's going to be a lull. So now,
dude, it's great because I can catch up. I ordered 2 Hermans from So Toys from different places. Because look, I need Rorschach, but what my dream is to have the unmasked Rorschach, Walter Kovacs, holding up the end is nigh sign. And
Yeah.
I want to live a life where on my YouTube channel, I'm just going to move the end is Walter Kovacs with the end is nigh. He's always going to be behind me forever.
Yeah.
And if people notice
comes
him,
with both head sculpts, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to have two. I had the Rorschach, but I really had to have the Walter Kovacs with this sign, the end is nigh.
Yeah.
I needed,
definitely.
and I, I hate to say it, but I thought I'd never be able to get one. But so Comic Sanctorum said, "Hey, we still have the Cajun card dealer and Herman," and I'm like, "Oh, really?" Click.
Did you get the Cajun card dealer?
Oh, come on, dude.
Did you get it? Did you
But
have it, bro?
I didn't pre-order him, but they had him for order. I'm like, click, because I wanted him, but I didn't pre-order him. So, but I know you're gonna show me. I know, dude. I watched Justin's video, and the fact that he comes with a 52-piece deck of cards, an entire deck of cards. Dude, oh, come on now. How great is that figure? I know.
Bro.
Dude, I know. I mean, ever since I got Cyclops, I'm like, I have to get every X-Men figure.
52 decks, bro. He has 52 cards that this figure comes with, bro.
I know. I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a beautiful figure. Like, you have to have it in hand to actually see how.
Oh well, I know. I didn't pre-order Superboy, but I'll find it. I'll get it.
Yeah, that'll be here this week as well.
I got the box. Yeah. I got the box. I got the Damn Toys Godfather. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I got the Ghost of Tsushima figure coming. I got so many things coming. It's good. Mm-hmm. Now, I gotta ask you. So. Tell us. I mean, you're the one that keeps it classy. You're the one that elevates the material.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you, Robert.
You do. I mean, sometimes I feel like, I let you down if I somehow say something wrong or do something stupid, which is twice or three times a day. I just want to make sure you're taken care of and that you're happy.
Well, thank you, Robert. Yes, you can, as you know, I have my own channel, Positive Fandom, on YouTube. And I also have the channel on Twitch. Is just one word, Positive Fandom. And, I review IPs on the channel with PGS members. I also have a lot of videos on the channel with interviews and talking about all the things we love about our IPs. On Monday nights, you can also find me on Toxic Femininity, streaming with Lorena Creole.
By the way, I love her. I love her. I mean, I love her as a fellow YouTuber. I don't mean like I'm in love with her. I love her. She's fantastic. She's terrific. Mm-hmm. I love her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fun show. Like,
we've talked a lot about. I have to say, Lorena would get this. So they've released a new trailer for Star Trek Picard or whatever, Picard Season 2, where they go back to the 21st century. As if I'm sure the showrunner's like, oh my God, it's amazing. We're going to the 21st century. There's a 2-part Deep Space Nine episode called Past Tense, where they go to San Francisco, the 21st century in 2024. And it's one of the great Star Trek 2-parters ever when they deal with the homeless problem and all that. And when I watched the new Picard trailer, I'm sure the showrunner's like, what if we went back to the 21st century? I'm like, oh, you mean how Deep Space Nine did in the 1990s? Mm-hmm. Sure. Whatever you say.
And
I love modern Star Trek. It's so creative and innovative, and they have so many new ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on Thursdays, you can find me on the 1/6 Scale Man Network on Uncivilized Scoundrels, where we talk Star Wars.
Yes.
On Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern, you can find me on Midnight's Edge in the Morning with Tom and Andre and Cameron. And of course, you can always find me here on the Burnettwork with our new show, Midnight Express.
We can't do that because
We
that
can't,
would mean we're all incarcerated for selling heroin in Turkey. Although that's funny because we could have the great Giorgio Moroder theme song. But no, so here's the thing. The only reason I want to do this, I love streaming with the two of you. But Midnight Metal started as a vestige of the Snyder Cut trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that was funny. And, you know, I do think, look, you grow, you evolve, you change. I think that this Friday night has become a favorite of mine. But it is not metal. It's not we're like, fuck yeah, dude. Oh my God, you're fucking metal. That was fun. It was good. But I think that the three of us, that's not the show we're doing.
Yeah.
Well, I think that last year we did a lot of metal shows, and I think that
We
we
did.
accomplished a lot. And
We
I'm
did.
proud of the work that we did. And
I am
I
too.
think that we made history with this show, and the show is still here. And we're still enjoying this show, and it has evolved. It's evolved into something different and something new for 2022, and it's just getting better and better all the time.
Yeah, and what I'm doing, like as I said earlier, Lael, physically, it's like basically this is just an excuse for me to drink. So what we're doing now is I am going to start working out. I'm going to start getting in shape. You can't drink. Can't drink.
That's
so
right.
people don't understand. Like I'm not going to eat fast food. I'm like I'm literally. I've done this a couple times before. I got to get into tip-top shape. It's time. So there is no Midnight Metal. There's no no. What we're going to do for this show is we are going to take this for cogent, intelligent discourse. We want people to weigh in, and we want to have a place where people can talk about the topics of the day free of judgment, and we want some intellectual discourse.
Yeah.
And I think that will be cool with the three of us. I think the three of us have something unique and interesting, and what we want to do is elevate that discourse.
And I also want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for modding tonight as well.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say to this, as everyone knows, I always say, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. Well, that's great. But you know what's really great? Having my two compatriots here. Lael Rockwell, the 1/6 scale man, and
Yes.
Positive Fandom. My God, the two of you, it warms my heart to stream with such people that are so much better than I am.
Oh,
And Lael, it's been so much fun talking about action figures and stuff. And
yes.
who doesn't have a crush on you? I have to make sure that no one says any bad things, or they do. They probably just send them right to you. I can't filter them out. So what can I do? But it's been great. The show's good, and I want to keep it going, but we're going to change it. Change it. Right?
Change is good. It's a new year.
Change
good.
the name.
Change is good, yeah.
And by the way, we need more artwork, and I'll figure it all out. It'll be fine. But so, both of you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you all for being here. And this is episode 74
Wow.
of this show. I cannot believe people are watching this show still. But it's like the death of Superman, issue 75 of Superman back in the 90s when Doomsday shows up and pummels our boy. Next week is episode 75, A New Dawn. A new dawn, a new day. Whatever. It's going to happen. Next week, Midnight Metal is going away. Midnight, it's up to you. You guys decide. Tell me the name.
Yeah.
And on that note, kids, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Hang on. Well, we'll see. I'm looking to try and turn off the show, but it's not giving me. I'm looking at these things. I'm like, well, maybe we'll just have to let it just play out. Who knows? But thank you both for being here. Wow, I'm still. I honestly, I can't end the show. It's kind of funny.
You can't. It's not gonna let you. It doesn't.
No, because it's not. Oh wait, hang on. I just have to re-log in, and then it will. Ah, there we go. I can end the stream. So all of you, thank you for being here. I'll be back tomorrow on Robservations. Where can people find the two of you on social media? Lael, where can people find you?
16 Scale Man YouTube page, as well as Instagram and Twitter. That's where you can find me.
Where are you? Besides where you stream, where can people find you?
Just the Positive Fandom YouTube page and on Positive Fandom on Twitch.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it has been a great night. Thank you so much. And I will see you later. And all of you here, I wish you, as always, to have a better day. Well,